Hello?
Hello.
Shit, why isn't this working? Wait, hold on. Can you hold on 1 second?
Yes, here I am, holding on.
Hold on. Hello? Hello?
Yes. Is
You
it
can hear,
okay
you
now?
can, yeah, it's okay
I
now.
could
Good,
hear you
great. Now
before.
what?
I could hear you before.
You can't hear me now?
No, I can hear you before and now. I didn't
Okay.
have any problems hearing you before,
No, I wanted to talk on my
but I can
headset
hear
so I
you
can
now.
clean. Okay, I just wanted to talk on my headset so I can clean. I
Mm.
want to be able to clean. Um, So yeah, I took my fourth and my fifth ketamine treatment. We didn't do my fourth one, but we'll just go over that quick because now I realize I want to focus on something else. So it was just basically dealing with that Hindu problem that you don't like dealing with. So I'm not going to talk very much about it, but the point was basically I felt as though I was doing the right thing by trying to pick apart Vedanta and pick apart their belief system, in order to kind of thwart it. And I guess that's, what I was thinking about. I actually moved on from those blogs now, and right now I'm focusing on the Mathilda Ludendorff blog, scientificnordicpaganism.blogspot.com.
Mm.
And that's going to be my next thing because I want to find out what these people believe because I couldn't understand her book. You know what I mean? I couldn't understand her book. And but anyway, let's just talk about I think that I've been thinking about these ketamine treatments, and I don't know, I think the whole nation would benefit from it. I think we're like entering some kind of like um pharmatopia or something like that, like in those movies like where all the people have to take a drug in the society in order for the society to be stable and calm, and everything like that. I mean,
So
we're already kind
everybody's dependent on psychotropic drugs to control their moods, and you think that's a good thing?
it depends, like the ketamine is a once treatment. It's not like you're constantly on psychotropic drugs, but yes, I think that it would help if if we incorporated these things more into society. Um, yeah, maybe it would make us more stable, and like I said, it made me feel less dependent on the need for a god, right? At least a little bit.
Well, if you're dependent on drugs, surely it would be better to believe in God.
Well, but then, I mean, okay, certain people just can't do that because, there's too much questions in the way. And, yeah, there's too many questions in the way. And then they get confused. And, I think intelligent people get more confused about it because there's so many different things. Like, people who, people who don't even want to learn about other people's spirituality, who don't even want to know what other people's spirituality is about, aren't going to get as confused, right? Like if you're just like, my religion is my religion and that's it, and this is the religion I was raised and that's the religion I'm going to follow, then you're not going to get as you won't get as confused.
Okay, so it's a choice that confuses people. But earlier you asked about, well, you mentioned questions, and Could you give us an example of questions you you, you want answered as
Well,
regards religion?
it just doesn't. It doesn't fit for me that the creation needs a creator, but the creator needs no creator. And why can't I just believe the creation was always here? Why can't I believe that God is the creation and just got, it got created? If God can be
But
created
you
without
surely understand the problem of infinite regression.
yeah, but
So
that
this
doesn't
question
change.
you asked has been asked so many times before, and they said, look, if we keep asking that, it'll be,
I
who created blah blah, and we're going to just stop it at that and assume there's an uncaused first cause,
Yeah,
and
well,
it's
just
like
assume.
logically you kind of need to go, to accept that.
No, this is just yeah. That's just don't ask the question. Don't the question is it's the question is not the right question. Like Jehovah's Witnesses are at least honest about it, and they say, well, you just have to believe that. I mean, if they can't, we can't prove it to you. We can't explain it to you. They don't even try to explain it to you. It's just something you have to believe. Okay, it's not anything that can be explained to anyone on this planet, and that's just not good enough for me. That's
Well,
just
look, well, how about this reasoning? If there was a creation, there must have been a creator, and that creator was God. What's so
well,
difficult
no,
about that?
because no, because maybe there wasn't a creation, maybe there was no creation, and it was always existing, and maybe it was always existing. Why can't the universe just appear out of nowhere, and God can just appear out of nowhere? Like God can just happen to have always been there. So why can't the creation always happen to have been there? I mean, when you start getting into these
Okay, okay, I understand your reasoning. I'm not dismissing it. And I'm saying we take, depending on whether we want to obey God's laws, we will take one or the other position because we can say, this is a reasonable position to take. Nobody can prove that the universe was uncreated, and nobody can prove that the universe is created because nobody was there at the time. So both positions are equally sound or logical at any rate. They would be logical, and depending on whether you incline towards obeying God's laws, you would choose one over the other, and it's as simple as that.
well, but who knows who God's laws are?
No,
Nobody
it's
knows what.
already there. It's like, it's in the Torah, it's in the Quran.
Yeah, but I don't believe in that, so I don't believe they're God's
Okay, so,
laws.
but you
So
don't want to obey those laws. Why not just admit that? You don't want to obey the laws in the Torah and the laws in the Quran.
yeah, but that's not necessary. If I did believe they were God's laws, I would follow them. If I
Okay,
if
but
I
you choose
believed,
not to deny God's existence by saying, well, the universe is always there, doesn't need anyone to create it. So, God is redundant. And then the
well,
next question to ask would be, well, um, what's the purpose of religion?
the purpose of religion is obviously to give people some kind of um, lack of doubt. Lack
To
of
give them
doubt.
spiritual comfort and give them a moral basis for the laws that they have. Okay, so
Yes, but
we
I
can
mean,
reduce it to public and
people
private
who just
morality.
people who can't just go along with the story, you know,
Sorry, what
need
is the story?
whatever the story is of whoever God sent and whatever God did and whatever God's laws are. If you can't buy this story, then you might need something else. You know,
Okay, so we've kind of boiled it down to you don't want to obey God's laws
no, it's
because
not. No, no. God's laws came second. First, you have to get people to believe in God, and then you have to get them to believe He sent laws. You can't say God sent laws, but you don't want to follow them. You have to first prove that. You can't just say God sent laws. You have to first prove that your God is the real God. You can't just start with the law.
okay, so I'm saying if we're going to worship a god, then we would have to worship the most powerful god conceivable, and that would be the Abrahamic God. who
Yeah, but
did
you say,
communicate with humanity twice through the Torah and the Quran. Or, we're just left with a system of Congress making up the rules as they go along.
well,
And,
I
and
mean,
I gather Americans are not happy with the state of affairs.
well, but they're not necessarily
And they're longing
looking.
for the good old days.
Not all Americans are longing for the good old days. This thing, this is the other thing that your side always does. You act like everyone is on your side, and that,
I'm
like,
not. I'm not, but I'm saying, obviously there is some kind of culture war going on, and obviously the political establishment is bashing Trump and his supporters on the head, and trying to use lawfare to put him out of the presidential race. So obviously something is going on. I mean, you can't just sort of ignore that. And the culture war has been going on for, well, decades, hasn't it? Between conservatives and liberals. And now we have the phenomenon of Christian nationalism. So something's going on.
well, something is going on. Well, something is going on, but a lot of people weren't happy when we freed the slaves either. I mean, and just too bad. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. I mean, there'll always be dissidents. So whatever the official moral system is, there's bound to be a few subversives and dissidents who don't want to be part of it. But at least, even in communist China, if you're, you can still agree that the official moral system of China is socialism with Chinese characteristics, even if you don't like it. That is really what I think the West lacks. Because it's not like, oh, so we are Christians, we are Muslims, we are Nazis, we are fascists, we are commies. You can't even pin the government down on anything. So what Congress or Parliament does in the case of the UK will be to say, you just have to follow the law of the land. And if you don't, we're going to put you in prison. And the laws will be whatever we want it to be. This is what the doctrine of parliamentary supremacy is all about. The doctrine of parliamentary supremacy means that Parliament can repeal or pass any law it wants. Do you think that's fair enough?
well, yeah, well, I mean, okay, well, they have restrictions from the Constitution. They can't pass any law that they want. Um, and the Constitution does give us a certain degree of liberties and freedoms here in America, so they can't just pass any law. And like, we do have certain framework, to work within. It's just not, these sexual. I mean, basically, secular Quranism is all based around sex. Really, its major, kind of talking points are sexual talking points, and everything is about marriage and children.
Yes,
And
because marriage is a eugenic filter. That's why it's almost universal, because eventually, no matter where in the world you are, you sort of work out that, well, we can't just let anybody have sex with everybody else, because it will be, well, degeneracy and chaos and criminality and corruption and the end of the existence of our group. So that's why, independently, most countries worked out that marriage was the best way to produce the next generation. And those who didn't think it was important, like the Nape tribe of wherever, I know it's a Native American tribe that I've just heard about yesterday through this chap I was talking to. Um, if you don't produce your next generation without um, degeneracy, you're just going to get weaker and older and just more corrupt, and then eventually people will come and take your stuff. which is what happened to the Native Americans.
Well, yeah, and I'm saying that, wake up that, well, the thing is that they've mixed liberalism in with bad ideas like don't have children and eugenics is bad and, these different kinds of
Yeah,
things. And
eugenics is well, I don't know. They're basically saying, oh, the Nazis did it. But actually, the Nazis were wrong in thinking that they needed to use eugenics because they were just reinventing the wheel.
no eugenics. I mean, usually people want more than just marriage certificates for eugenics. Usually they want some kind of standards like, you should be this tall, you should be like this, you should have this level of IQ. You should, it's
Yeah, yeah,
more than
I know. It's like, people think of, the good-looking, handsome Aryan, the beautiful Aryan woman, etc. But really, to be eugenic is to inherit desirable, heritable traits, right?
yeah,
And you can
with
say yes, tall, tallness. I mean, sorry, height and strength, etc. But really, if you want to reduce it into an abstract idea, it would be marriageability. It's like,
marriage.
well,
That's
if,
too
if
low of
if
a
your
that's
parents got married and had you, the
uh,
least you can do is marry yourself and have legitimate children too. It's
yeah, but
that simple. I know you
most
don't want to do it, but I'm just saying I reduce it to that simple way that I don't think that there can be any room for misunderstanding.
it's just not it's a little bit too primitive. It's a little bit too just basic. Like you're not going to get great stock by just okay get married
What is
because
great stock but the imperial stock? If you, I mean, let's assume that no matter how ugly your men or women are, as long as they're capable of producing, well, warriors and, colonial administrators, they'll be all right. And your group will continue. And you can't even do that, then you'll just get taken over. I mean, it is a brutal Darwinian fact.
yeah, well, keep that in mind and find some better way to create your population. And get on it, get scientific, get futuristic, get people are like, oh God, Vincent, you want a Brave New World? Like what? Who wrote Brave New World? George Orwell? Who? No, not George Orwell. Uh,
Aldous Huxley.
Aldous Huxley. Like, oh, you want a Brave New World where it's like there's eugenics, but it's also sexual liberation at the same time. Like, yes, the problem is that these liberals don't know how to mix the two. Okay, like they don't know how to mix those two things together to have a sexually liberated society that also practices eugenics.
Well, maybe it's impossible. Because if you talk about sexual liberation, it means sexual liberation from the rules of marriage and good parenting. So if you forego chastity, you will forego stable marriages, which means you will forego stable families, which means you will forego sane and productive citizens of the future.
Well, it's it's well, a new ideology has to come in and kind of take over, and yeah, a new ideology has to come in and take over, and a new way of thinking, and we just need to get liberals off of their anti-eugenics stance. You just have to kind of I
Okay,
mean,
carry on.
you know, I don't know. I just it's the lack of it's just kind of like compartmentalizing everything. Like if you're left, you believe in this. If you're right, you believe in that, and never should the two meet. And I'm trying to make the two meet. You know, it's about trying to get the two to meet together.
Well, what you propose is very experimental.
Well,
Now,
I'm not proposing it for the whole earth, and I'm not proposing it for everyone immediately. And you know, it's not like I'm looking to end everyone else's reproduction immediately, but you know, it's
okay,
kind of
so
like,
in theory, what you can do, what surrogacy would be your idea of doing it your way for gay men.
yeah, but no, actually, even I have to promote it even for straight men because I think that, you know, none of these, you know, men, none of these women want to marry any of these men. None of these men are getting married
So you
at
just
all.
need to sort out your gender relations, and the only way to do that is to change the way men and women strike bargains with each other. And being men and women, the bargain will be about sex, which is, unavoidable.
Yes, well, that's just a very sad state of affairs. And, you know, you want to think that these things aren't unavoidable. Did someone just enter the room?
Well, I gave the link to Arturo, who I was talking to yesterday. I figured that you're probably bored with having these repeated discussions with me, so I don't know if you'd like to meet him.
Sure. Hi. What's your name? Arturo?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Your name is Arturo?
Yeah, that's right.
I was watching a little bit of your thing. I saw that you're trying to get people to stay in America rather than leave it, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Well, why is that? I mean, why do you think America has something left to give?
Absolutely. But I want to know, so you're pro eugenics?
Yes.
Now, eugenics is not just fitness. It means like forceful sterilization and forceful reproduction and such. It's basically taking away people's ability to reproduce for the sake of others. Not just making sure your baby looks the best or is the strongest or has the best genes or whatever.
Well, there's different interpretations. You don't have to force people to do anything. You can have your own eugenics program without going around, forcing the rest of the world to do it.
I guess I've never really heard of like soft eugenics, but maybe.
Yeah, that's what I promote, like a soft eugenics program.
Now, so I'm just going to take a liberty to think to assume that you're queer, right?
Yeah.
So I have a proposal for gay marriage, for like what to do about it, and I think I could make everybody happy. And I want to pass it by you since you're that's your community and what they probably think of this. So ultimately, what the people on the right are messed up about is that this tradition of marriage has been renamed by government, which it's not government's role to do that, to rename cultures and stuff like that. But yet the issue at hand is not so much the cultural practice, but the fact that the government recognizes it and gives people tax benefits. And so there's this issue of, well, not every couple has children and they still get the same tax benefits or similar tax benefits. So how can that exclude then to a couple that is gay that can't reproduce but yet is they're doing the same thing? So I think the issue there is not so much marriage, but it's the relationship of marriage to the government and essentially government benefits. At its core, it's about the equality, the equal access to government benefits. That's really what it's all about. And so I think going the route of like a civil union or a domestic partnership, I think the best thing probably is to get rid of the heteronormative assumptions about couples and say, create something like a domestic partnership, so that a domestic corporation, so that you can have multiple people let's say you want to live with 3 or 4 people. Why does it have to be 2, right? So you could have multiple people, and then you can save some money living together, just like like a married couple would. And I think that makes people, so gays can get access to benefits, and the traditionals can keep their culture without having the government change the definition of it and all that. So.
Well, I think I wouldn't mind if it was civil unions for everyone. Just get rid of marriage and make everything these civil contracts, and then everything is just a civil contract, and that's it. And then there's no definition, there's no line in between, there's no different kind of status.
A domestic partner, a domestic corporation where you could have more than 2 people together under a roof.
Yeah, but as long as everyone's under that straight and gay, as long as everyone's under the same system.
It'll be platonic. The idea is that you live together and you save some money, just like a married couple would, because married couples don't have to have children. So it's there's it is a quality issue, but I think that could easily help everybody, and that could get everyone back to more important things, instead of bickering about this, that, and the third. But,
well, I agree with that as long as it's the same. But I don't agree with, for straight people it's marriage, but for gay people it's civil unions, and there's a difference. You know what I mean? I don't want that.
It's the culture. It goes back thousands of years. Really, the concept of marriage we have comes from the Bible. Because the marriage outside of that was basically like polygamy. And so that's where we get.
Well, there was polygamy in the Bible, and it was never.
But it's not prescribed, though.
It's not prescribed, but it was never really banned, and that's why even in Judaism they later had to. It's not banned in Judaism. I mean, there was a.
God. Jesus said, "By their fruits you should know them," and by Christianity's fruits we have this idea of marriage. So that came from somewhere, and that became the most prevalent form of marriage all over the world. So that So that's a lot. That's saying a lot, So that's just not trivial.
Yeah, well, but just because something's been around for a long time doesn't mean that it needs to stay in existence or that it can't change.
Yeah, but it's like it's nobody's, because it's a legacy. So it's nobody's. Nobody has the right to pull it down unilaterally. It's a commonwealth.
Well, common law. Well, slavery was a legacy too. I mean, lots of things are legacies.
It was one that was at odds with half the country, and that eventually led to a civil war. So it's a little different.
Yeah, well, obviously, half the country wants gay marriage, and half the country doesn't. So, I mean, if half the country,
I don't think they do. I think they want gays to be treated equally by the government and have equal benefits. I think that's what they really care about. They don't care about some cultural institution that's thousands of years old. They really don't. What they care about is whether gays can get the same benefits as straight people. That's it.
Well, no, the thing is that marriage is illegal. Nobody got married without it being in the law. I mean, the thing is that you view marriage as kind of like this religious ceremony or something.
It is. That's where it comes from. Like I said, we see marriage before the Bible, before the gospel, was essentially a way of making sure when you died, all the stuff you've acquired goes down to certain people and not other people, and basically creating an institution out of that. That's why you had a guy with multiple women, because it was essentially based on power. But what happened with Christianity was that you had the example of the church and Jesus, and that's why they call the church the bride of Jesus. And so this idea of like, what did Jesus do for the bride, right? For the church, he gave his life. He gave everything he had. So that in that same way, you give everything you have to that one person, and for one lifetime. And so that's what we're designed for, and that's there's a reason why this caught all over. Even people who want to get all like progressive or radical, eventually they pair bond. Everybody pair bonds, even if it's like not a like a main squeeze kind of deal. You still pair bond, And so, that's imprinted in us because that's our pattern. That's the best
No,
way.
not everyone pair bonds. I'm
No,
polygamous.
I'm not saying that it has to be exclusive pair bonding where you don't see it, but the people get a main squeeze. People have like someone they feel the most like, good with in that regard, most comfortable with or whatever. And someone they look to the most, even if they're having sex with multiple people, it's like, like the blacks, they call that a main squeeze, so, or people call it polygamy, but you might have like a person that's like a main person or a central person in your
Not always. Not everyone's built like that, but I mean, I know a lot of people are.
Like 98% of people are. Come on.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. Everyone says that 98% of people are straight, but we know that's not actually true.
Yeah.
Because there's all these people that claim that they're straight and they're really not, and they're really having sex. And
I mean, it's like if you were starving and you ate like a horse, does that mean you like horse? Like
no, they're not starving. These men are not starving. They're gay. They're not starving.
Like I'll give you an example, right? So let's say you have like an Anglo-Saxon warrior back like 1,000 years ago, and so he has a drive. He has these two sensations or drives or whatever, or feelings that he could entertain. One is of being super violent, of like being rageful, of like going crazy and on somebody, right? That kind of the desire to do that, falling into that, and he identifies with that. And that's all great. He does that to the max, but he may not identify with like sexual urges, right? And so homosexual ones, right? And so then now let's like fast forward to like the Village in Manhattan, right, today, and you have a gay guy there who has these gay feelings, these homosexual feelings, these drives in that sense, that he's entertaining, that he's basically making more cemented, like making them more like a muscle that you train, right? He's doing that, and that's all great. That's his identity, right? But then when he gets those feelings of wanting to like kill his like boyfriend, like literally kill, like or hurt them, because of whatever, they get mad or they did something, and you feel like that, like you want to take that bottle and smash it over their head, and that's wrong, but you want to do it. You don't identify with that. That's not me. No, I'm not a violent person. That's just a fit or whatever, or just something. It's something bad. And so in that way, it's just all you're doing ultimately is just like you're training your brain to do certain things and not others, and you're just getting more used to them, and then making excuses for them and all that. Ultimately, God made us for a reason. Like it's very simple. Follow the manufacturer's instructions, right? If you didn't create yourself, God created you, so it's just easy to just say, God, what do you want me to do? Because you know me, you created me, the best way for me to be happy. And it's not like, well, what if he's lying? What if God is just trying to play with you? And it's like, well, again, he came here and he got nailed to a cross and got whipped and chained and went through a lot of stuff that I don't think anyone would go through if they were just trying to mess around with. Like,
okay, a lot of people, first of all, I mean, people reject Jesus. Muslims and Jews reject Jesus because that's idolatry. To say that God took shape in a man and came down here and did shit for us that's pure paganism. That's idolatry.
Incarnation is paganism. That's freaking orthodoxy.
No, that's idolatry. That's why Muslims and Jews reject. They reject. I know, but but the point is that you're bringing up a God that not everybody believes in, and for good reason.
God gave you that, gave them the ability, the freedom to do that.
Okay, but they have good reason not to believe in it, because why should they worship a God who took shape?
Yeah, who took what?
That took shape. Why should they worship a God who took shape?
Wait, took a shave?
Took shape as a man, took shape.
Because, well, remember, it's a trinity, right? So it's a triune, so you have the Father who never was incarnated, right? So he's like,
so these are three separate gods then?
No. This is okay. Imagine this, right? Imagine like you're with somebody, and it's just it's like you finish each other's sentences and all that shit, right? And then it's just and you feel like this connection where sometimes you don't even have to say like what to do, like you already know what you want to do and what the other wants to do and all that stuff. Okay, God is like that, but in a way that's completely perfect among those three, where they are so in tune with one another that they all get one another, and they do, and everything they do is to further the other's agenda, so to speak. Well, it's not the other's agenda; it's actually the Father's agenda. But everything they do is to further that, and completely, it's like there's no fat. Right. It's like everything you do is like perfectly fitted to glorify the other and to further the Father's plan. And there's no resistance. It's beautiful. It's like,
okay, but are they one or three people? How many people are we talking about here?
No, we're talking about three persons.
Three separate, three absolutely 1000% separate gods.
Yeah, in the same way that like me and my father are separate people, but we're also both human beings. We're part of the same species. We're the same species.
Okay, so then that sounds like polytheism.
No, not at all. No, because again, remember the Father. I subscribe to like a what is it called?
Monotheism.
No, not monotheism. Monarchical Trinitarianism, and that says that the Father is basically the one who's in control, and the other ones proceed from the Father, but they're both co-equal God. But it's the Father who's basically setting what the agendas are, and it's everything is his idea essentially. Okay,
so then do you believe God took shape in Jesus Christ or no?
Yes. As the incarnation.
God the Father, or no?
No. Neither the Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit's with us though, right now, but no, the Father never incarnated.
Okay, do you see now? Don't you see how some people would get mad because this is confusing?
Oh, absolutely.
The question of monotheism.
Listen, that confusion, right? You should expect that when it's real, because if it was some kind of fucking lie, it would be something that you could get that would be convincible. No, this is something that's incomprehensible. It's a mystery. Okay, we have some metaphors to talk about it and some ways of thinking about it, but ultimately it's a fucking mystery. It really is like baffling. But that's exactly what you would expect the God of the universe, the source of eternity, to be like. I mean, you wouldn't expect him to be, recognizable in that regard. I mean, it should be mind baffling. The source of all knowledge and truth and light and love and all this stuff. That it's going to be weird. So
I don't know who said that though. I don't know who said God has to be incomprehensible. I didn't come up with that rule.
No. Well, remember, he incarnated. He became on level with us. He basically.
No, you're saying that God is so weird to be incomprehensible, but I'm saying that that's not necessarily a prerequisite for me to believe in God, that he has to be so weird I can't understand.
No, I didn't say that. You want to believe God because one, it's true, and two, he loves you.
Well, but I mean, look, the point is that when you talk about God, obviously in this day and age in America, not everyone is Christian anymore. You can't.
That our Christian society ultimately afforded that, because God wants your conviction, right? He wants your honest feelings towards him, right? There's no way you could force someone to become a Christian, right? So because of that, we created a society where people can follow their conscience. Because since I can't see into your heart, we basically give each other the space to follow what we believe is right. Because ultimately, even if what you're doing is wrong, I can't force you to do what you think is wrong or what is right. So you as long as you follow your conscience and you're peaceful, you don't hurt other people. That's the way our society is, and that is generated because of Christianity. That sense of tolerance.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, that tolerance is Christian. But the thing is that if you look, in the Old Testament, idolatry was just as bad as murder. It was just as bad. You got killed for idolatry just as much as murder. It's not like God doesn't hate idolatry. So the fact that Christians allow idolatry...
He was a lot more strict on Israel, because Israel had a lot more rules, because God wanted to keep them separate from the other nations so that Jesus would have a context to arise in. There's no other rabbis and other, so the Jewish context is very unique, and that was supposed to be it's almost like a cocoon for Jesus to come from. Okay,
so why would the Messiah of the Jewish people allow idolatry? Why would he do that?
He didn't. No.
Yes, he did. Well, according to you, Christians allow idolatry.
The people at the time were actually quite idolatrous, because they believed that the Messiah was going to be this big warrior that was going to come back and kill the Romans and, conquer and, protect the temple and all that stuff. Right. And so that's what they were expecting. And so when Jesus started proclaiming himself as the Messiah, even John, like I think like in John chapter like 11 or 12, even there was a part of the Bible where John sent some of his peoples to Jesus to basically ask him, like literally straight up, Jesus, yeah, you're doing great stuff. We like you, but are you sure you're the Messiah? Because we expected the Messiah would have conquered the Romans by now, and you're still here, doing some miracles in here, there, and washing feet, and we don't know if that maybe you're mistaken. I mean, seriously, I remember reading that and I was like fucking laughing. That's how real the Gospels are, because all those embarrassing things are in there. I mean, there's so much embarrassing tidbits in the gospel in terms of if no one's writing this thinking I gotta, this is a big lie to make me look good and to give me power. It's like, no, it's all a bunch of, that's why when the Peter, which is supposed to be the top apostle, the most committed, he basically tells him, Jesus tells him, you're going to deny me 3 times before the sun comes up. And so he's like, no, no, I'm going to fight to you for the end. I don't care who comes in our way. And what happens? Denies him 3 times, where people come up to say, you know Jesus, I don't know anything about him. 3 times. I mean, so all that is super embarrassing, and yet it's in there because it's true, because that's the whole point, and it's a beautiful thing. And you look. Here's the thing, and I was telling Claire this before, that I believe if you follow your conscience, right? And because everyone has a conscience, everyone has that feeling that something's wrong, and you could suppress it over time, you could bury it, but everyone knows about it. And so if you follow it decently and you stay good to it, I believe you're probably going to see the new heavens, new earth. Now, the problem though is where you could start living your new life now, new creation, life with God beginning now. You're gonna, the second coming may be, thousands, millions, billions of years away. So you're going to be in this kind of really weird spot, in between the resurrection and your deathbed, and you're just going to be for millions of years, possibly just like in this kind of limbo, possibly even worse. And so why go through that? Why go through that when you could join the new creation now? But God's going to give you that possibility. But I'll tell you this one: if you are considering it, but you feel like, I'll just put it off. I'll be like Augustine and say, Lord, grant me chastity, but not yet. Right? I'll just tell you something: putting it off to tomorrow. One, you're not guaranteed tomorrow, and 2, the more you put it off, the more you you make it into a habit of doing so, and then you're always going to keep putting it off more and more. And then by that time, it'll be too late, So, it's a beautiful thing he set up ultimately. It's very, very delicate, very sophisticated even, because he doesn't want to come up in your bed and show himself. He wants to find the people who truly love him. He wants to have eternity with us, with those people that are real. That really love him, not like schemers, not people that just love him because he's the biggest, baddest thing in the universe, because he's most powerful, he could do anything. No, because he wants to have a genuine love. The same way you have women that want a genuine relationship, genuine love. That's what God wants, because that's where it comes from, because we were made by him in his image. So he wants to ensure that the people that are coming by are going to be good people. But, there's some people who just for whatever reason want to make some certain choices, and eventually they make choices that just bring them farther and farther away from him, and that's what sin is, And people say does being gay send you to hell? If it did, being straight would send you to hell too, because being straight wouldn't send you to heaven. So what really sin comes from, no matter what the sin manifests as, is a sense of self-righteousness, where you basically say, I know what's best for me. I don't want to listen to anybody else, especially, God. And I just want to do me. I want to, the way I think, the way I feel, the way I see things. And that sense of self-righteousness, instead of having God become the Lord of your life, literally control all of your life, which is a beautiful thing. It's like better than a puzzle piece fitting or whatever. But instead of being that Lord over your life, you want to be your own Lord. And that self-righteousness is sin. That's your sin. That's where sin is. Everything else is just a manifestation of it. It's like if sin is missing the mark, it doesn't matter where you don't hit the mark, the bullseye. The point is that you didn't hit the bullseye. So even if you hit it on the floor, you hit it in the tree back there, it doesn't matter where it landed. You didn't get the bullseye. You didn't get the target. And so that's what sin is ultimately. So all the other stuff is just an outgrowth of it, but it goes back to one thing and one thing only: self-righteousness. And so you want to postpone that. God made you. He knows every hair on your head. He knows things about you don't know about yourself. That if you start to live with him and let the Holy Spirit start to guide you and stuff, you're gonna literally see all those things in your life that you thought were like failures of yours or embellishes or things that deformities or whatever, that really were there for a purpose, and every little thing mattered, and it all goes back to his purpose for you and eternity. We're going to live for eternity, and so it's like we're be in a good spot, and I can't stress this enough to more and more people, and
it gets confusing when you have someone else come in, and then you talk about the Gospels. First of all, the Gospels came from 40 different books on 3 different continents. It's not even, there was no book of Matthew.
The Bible.
Yeah, the Torah was basically the New Testament is just this. I mean, they brought that together from 50 different documents, and it's the Bible, the book of Matthew, Luke, John, when all these books were all put together, it wasn't like there was a clean book of Hebrews and a clean book of Matthew and a clean book of Revelation and a clean book of this. I mean, it was just obviously it was just this hodgepodge of just bringing together all these different fragments.
That's not true. What you had was you had once Christianity became legal, it's it wasn't like you couldn't get killed for it. People could pick up their head and so and come out of the catacombs and shit. They started to look at one another and say, "Hey, you got some weird beliefs, and you got beliefs that are really, we're all Jesus followers, but it's you believe he's not God? And I believe he's God." So anyway, so people then started having these councils. The first one was about whether Jesus was God or not, right? And the nature of that. But, and you had several others based on other things. And in those councils, there wasn't an arbitrary rule. They were basically bringing everything together and saying what's cohesive, what's coherent, and what's, superfluous. And the superfluous stuff was always forgeries. People basically trying to make the Gospel of Thomas or whatever, and writing it in 200 years after Thomas is dead. And so you had these forgeries, and most of them were basically people's own philosophies. A lot of them were based, for instance, the Gospel of Thomas is very heavily based on Greek wisdom literature. With all the phrases and the Confucius-like sayings and so on. It's just it's very in that vein, and so it's not real. Now with the criteria for what do we include in the canon? The criteria was essentially books that were either written or basically inspired by written about those people that were closest to Jesus, basically his apostles. And so nobody else, not the church. Right? We don't read gospels written by the church fathers, right? No, we only read ones that were basically those people that sat and ate and drank and saw Jesus die and saw him resurrected again. That's what it means. Those apostles. That's So everything, all the letters they wrote, and plus Paul, by the way, Paul is included here because he came to him in Damascus. So all the letters they wrote, all the gospels they wrote.
But this wasn't all. These letters and these different kinds of things came from different sources. It wasn't all one letter. It wasn't one.
Several letters.
No, but it wasn't. No, I'm saying that if you have the Book of Matthew wasn't originally, or whatever the book was, it wasn't original.
Letter, no.
No, any book, any letter came from varying sources that were pasted together. This is like cobbled together.
No, not at all. So what happens is you can imagine the original copy, which no one has, which is a good thing because, if they had the original copy, they would be able to doctor it and stuff. But first you had the original copy, and then let's say 10 people copy the original copy. And then those 10 copies, then they get copied, let's say 10 other times by 10 other people, and then so on and so forth. And so what you have is like not only like a progression through time, but like across it as well. And the great thing about that is we have a lot of these manuscripts, and we could then compare them at their generations, right? Like, laterally. And we could see that, okay, so this one has a typo, but we noticed that this one doesn't have that typo, and we could see what that letter is supposed to be. Because they're all trying to write the same thing, and so we could see where the gaps are, based on looking at them and comparatively, and that's how we were able to like basically acknowledge like that we have a really accurate, like especially like let's say the newer translation, not like the ESV or the NLT or the NIV or even like the New King James. Those are really updated and they're really good. And very accurate, very, very accurate. And then look, I mean, we found the Dead Sea Scrolls, and then we realized that it showed that the Old Testament we have now is almost basically the same as the Old Testament from 2,000 years ago. So that just goes to show you how. Remember, the people took a lot of pains to make sure these books, these Gospels, were preserved. I mean, people dedicated their lives to just copywriting all these things over and over again so that there could be, so if there was one fire somewhere that, it wouldn't burn all of them. So there would be so many of them that it would never leave. And they did that. And I appreciate it. There's a lot of love there.
But there's also a lot of scholars who say that, not all these letters from Matthew all lined up with each other. So you have to kind of mix and match in order to get, a steady letter.
The same, right? So even like let's say if police are interrogating a bunch of people, some criminals, and they all give the same story, that's a red flag. Different people notice different things, and different Gospels were made with different intentions in mind. No,
I think you're missing the point. The point that I'm saying is that they had 12 different letters, and then they said, okay, let's mix and match these in order to get a full story.
No, because the letters were basically very concise in the sense that like Paul was writing to the church at Corinthians, and he was writing once, and then he wrote a second time to them. And so you could see the letter. You could see where he says, dear, Corinthians, hey, it's Paul, but and then goodbye, peace unto you, dear, sincerely, Paul. I mean, you could see all that stuff there.
Yeah, but I don't think it was one letter, one copy that got sent. It was like, the original letter got lost, and then there were 12.
Michael Heiser called that the stapler theory. That these people, like after they died, they just put all their works together, and then they took a big stapler and they stapled them together and said, boom, now that's going to be the book of so and so. And no, that's not what happened at all. That's, neither did these guys like one day were normal and then they get zapped by like, a lightning bolt. And then they just start automatic writing all, no, it's God has so much sovereignty that these people had developed their whole lives, every piece of their character in a way that being just themselves, God would get what he wants. That's how much sovereignty he has. I mean, that's amazing. With all the moving pieces and everything. I mean, it really is how amazing he is. He is in that much control. And yet knowing how much control he has in that regard, how much restraint he has as well to allow, this crap that's going on now. But hey, if he stopped allowing it, in the past, I would have never been able to know him. So obviously he keeps it going because he wants more people to be with him. And that's the only reason, because otherwise he'd probably end it right now. But he wants, again, I wouldn't be there if it was like, before me. So, he just wants more people. And I totally understand that. And and I love him. It's my will. I ask, please make my will your will. Everything that I desire and love, make it so that it's something you desire and love, or what you made me to be. And it's just he's given me that over and over and over again, and it's a beautiful thing. And
Well, I'm saying that there's many questions, and I don't necessarily believe that well, like Muslims and Jews would say that God would not confuse his monotheism to you. He wouldn't confuse you like that. Why would he confuse you? Why three? Why not four? Why not this? Why not that? You know what I mean? And the things
that are important for people to know, like the gospel, are super simple. A child could learn it. Things that are like the mysteries are like extra content, or like behind the scenes content, so to speak.
Well, but people are going to ask those questions, and that's why people.
But the idea is that it's not like you need to understand God's triune nature in order to be saved. If you don't understand his triune nature, you're going to hell. Like, no, it's literally like a hobby you could take, trying to understand that mystery. Ultimately, in terms of salvation, like whether you're going to go to hell, it's just whether, you believe in Jesus and get faith in him.
Well, but it comes down to, people are going to ask, is God three or one? People are going to ask that.
If God's what?
People are going to ask if God is three or one. People are going to ask that question.
He's three and one.
Yeah, well, that would lead people to be confused and maybe adopt Islam because.
Put it this way: there are three people that are so well, connected to one another in that way I said before, that they are the center and the origin of all things. So, like if you go to like the most real reality, right? The most base level reality. It's, where everything else is based on and coming out of. It's these guys, these three people in such a beautiful, loving relationship that's like overflowing with love. And it's a source of all the stuff that we, identify as good and righteous. And yet, they basically said, man, this is great. Let's share this with a bunch of people. That's literally what they're doing. It has nothing to do with they can't get any more happy. They can.
Okay, well, the point, look, that doesn't make sense, because in the New Testament, Jesus admitted.
Selfish too, Like if I get something, I just want it to myself. I get it.
No. What I'm saying is that in the New Testament, Jesus admitted he didn't always know the Father's will. He didn't always know.
That's right.
Okay, so how can they be one person if he doesn't even know his will?
Well, each one has their own mind, but that's
okay. So are there three? Is this monotheism? Or okay, so this is what I'm talking about. People are going to say, okay, this does not make sense. I'm confused. And that's Islam but Islam offers like, okay, one God, that's it. No triune, no Jesus, no God taking flesh, none of this confusing stuff. Just boom. You shall
know them by their fruits. Look at how much. Okay. Christianity's changed the world for the better versus, with all respect, Islam hasn't even come close to that. I mean, even the way
Christianity caused a lot of problems too.
Not as much as Islam.
Okay, but it did. If it was a perfect religion, it wouldn't have caused any problems.
No, and that's the thing about Christianity, is that it's about people that are sinful, people that are like vindictive. Remember, it says in the Bible that there are going to be people that are going to go to Jesus in the end time and going to say, at the judgment, and say, listen, we did all these things in your name. Don't you know us? And he's going to say, depart from me. I never knew you. Even though you said my name and you said you were a Christian and you did things in my name, you were not you were a liar. You never knew my character. You never knew me as a person. You were doing things that were diabolical, doing things to hurt people, to boost your ego, and you said so in my, and yet you had nothing to do with me. And he writes that there.
Muslims say the same thing, that when bad things happen in Islam, it's not real Islam, and but
that's not just like some guy from Reddit 2 weeks ago. This is like 2,000 years ago. Jesus said that, so he's, got to cut him some slack there.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is that, like, okay, whenever Muslims don't allow freedom of religion, or they don't seem to, or they attack people, then they say, well, but that's not real Islam. And you're saying, but that's not real.
Nothing to do with what we're talking about.
You're saying that's not real Christianity, what the Christians did.
No, that's what Jesus said. That's not what I said. That's what Jesus said, that he's going to be at the end time rejecting certain people that that are going to come
For
to
doing what? For waging war in his name? Are Christians not allowed to wage war?
It could be that. It could be basically anything that basically.
So Christians shouldn't wage wars at all.
The idea is this. No, the idea is this: that people were doing and saying things, saying that they were doing so because of Jesus or that because they love Jesus or whatever, when in fact they never knew Jesus. And the way you learn who Jesus is you read the Gospels, you read what's written. And then you get a character. You feel just like you read a novel and you get an idea of what a character is like in the novel. You do the same thing with Jesus. You start to realize, okay, this is the way he would respond to questions. This is how he would make jokes. This is how he would, flip it on them. These are things that, and then you start to, put together like this kind of person in Jesus and what he's like and his character. And it's actually a beautiful, the guy is, he's, really, everyone likes him. I mean, the only people that don't like him is because you're tied to you're basically a slave to dying. To put it in a nutshell. But essentially, you've made a decision to turn away from God. But it's hard to hate Jesus. Some people do though, but they're very they're just trying to show off to the devil. Really, they don't really hate him. They're just trying to say, look how bad I am. Look how wicked I am.
Well, my problem with Jesus is that he claimed to be the Messiah of this empire that murdered all these pagans, and then he went on and said the pagans are bad, the pagans are this. No sympathy for any kind of that. Why would you want to be? Why would you want to be the culmination and the Messiah of fucking Israel? Who would want to be the Messiah of that?
So listen to this. Right? Listen to this. So I forgot the French guy's name, but some French guy, like he was a Catholic, but he got excommunicated. And I'm paraphrasing. I don't want to look for the quote, but paraphrasing. He said, Jesus foretold the kingdom, and then came the church, and the church came instead. And so the idea of the church, which is really, it's just the church isn't, it really means it's just a place where you're supposed to become more like Christ. It's supposed to be the people in your life that help you become more like Jesus Christ, that teach you about him and all that stuff. And, because that's something you're born with. It's, literally something you got like a muscle, you got to grow. And that's all it is. It's not a status image. It's not virtual single. It's literally to help you become more like Jesus. It's very practical. And yet in the Bible, the ecclesia is only mentioned like once or twice, and never in the way of like an institution. And so people need to realize that Jesus never talked about a church. He never talked about these kinds of institutions. And the closest thing we had to in those days that the apostles had were basically them getting together, talking about Jesus, and also going to new people and talking about it, and basically applying what they knew about Jewish ways and Jewish law, and then applying that in light of Jesus, so that basically updating it and seeing, and reasoning from that, like Paul did that a lot. And so, that has nothing to do with, like, let's say, the Pope or the Southern Baptist Convention. So, knowing how bad the church has done, and church needs to, I don't know if they acknowledge that. I mean, I'm sure some people do, but I don't think most of them acknowledge how bad of a job they do. Like, even if it's like unintentional, I mean, they're doing terribly. And the only thing that's saving Christianity, besides Christ, no, but the only thing that I don't want to say the only thing, but the thing that's bringing it back right now is the internet, because the people who have the Holy Spirit in them, the fullest, filling, spilling over with the Holy Spirit, instead of only influencing the people around them like it was back in the day, they can now make videos, and now people all over the world, especially more and more people outside of America, which is, praise Jesus for that, praise God. More and more people get to see the few elite preachers and the few like people that are truly in Christ, that are overflowing with the Holy Spirit. The best teachers, the best, not the guy who went to seminary and doesn't even understand what he wants, and he's kind of like does everything lukewarm and half-assed, and the sermons are all like kind of like no, like the people who do the best, that are doing it like from that are the most inspired. And that's what's saving. That's what brought me to Christ. It wasn't a church, like a local church. It was basically learning through the internet, and more people, especially overseas, are doing this, and it's amazing. It's you're going to see a huge resurgence in Africa, in South America, and in Asia of Christianity, of biblical, Protestant style Christianity. I mean, it's evangelical style Christianity. It's a beautiful. Even if we in the States don't feel it, they're going up. I mean, I talk to them a lot. There's a lot of people from like West Africa that are Christian that, you'd be surprised how well versed they are and how well discipled they are. Even though they talk funny, they know verses, they know like insights and ways of applying it. Like it's very, very refreshing, very beautiful. It's a wonderful thing. Look, we're gonna rule this universe. Right? We're gonna rule over all the matter, and that's why the universe is so big, because we're gonna be here forever, and we're gonna be doing so many different things and on building so many things on so many levels and just doing so many. It's all gonna be glorifying Him, and we're gonna be His ambassadors, and it's just gonna be a beautiful thing. It's amazing, what we're destined for. We're not destined to rot in the ground. We're not like supposed to just get have a 5, 10, 15 years of like fun life or whatever, and then we're old and fat and sick or whatever. No, we're meant to live forever in peak condition, getting better and better and better. I mean, when I first used to think about this shit, I couldn't believe it, and I was really like scared to think about it because I just couldn't believe it. It's just like this is almost like too much. It almost feels like a chore. Like I got to be up forever, but as my prayer life grows, the Holy Spirit reveals more and more to me of what that of what the new heavens and new earth and what new creation is like, and I can't wait, even if it's 1 billion years from now. I mean, it's going to be great. It's beautiful.
Okay.
I need more cheese dip.
I guess.
I ran out of cheese dip.
I mean, it sounds very emotional, and Christianity, a lot of Christianity is very emotional.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about love. Paul said, the three things that are most important in life is love, hope, and faith. Or something to that degree. And then he says, of these, love is the most important. That your knowledge will pass away, like your abilities, your capacities, your strengths, and all that are all going to pass away. What's not going to pass away is that belonging, that love. That's just it's going to become brighter than everything else, and it's going to be who we are forever. Just that's why, by the way, we grow. That's why we're like, because the angels, when God made the angels and stuff, they're powerful and all that, but they're static. They don't grow. They're like, they didn't have like a childhood or anything. They're just straight. They're born as is. Where we grow, and when you realize that we're going to grow forever, so it's just going to be an eternity of just things going up and up and just getting better and better. I believe, I can't say this for sure, but I believe that that's at least one of the reasons why God created humans, because He wanted that dynamic factor of a creature, of a child, basically, that can basically grow alongside Him forever. Almost like in a way, maybe He's like, I wanted someone who could like run with me, like to go, run or jog with me, someone run alongside me, and that's what we are, I'm almost like thinking like, well, is He going to create another being and is going to fall in love with them? We're going to be like everybody else, but who knows?
He knew we were going. He knew before He created us that we were going to rebel and all this horrible stuff was going to happen. And why even do that? Why create?
So the philosophers, they have a concept called trans-world depravity, right? And so you can think of it like as, let's say you got 3 young kids and you want to take them to ice cream, right? You want to have ice cream with them. but you know that no matter what way whether you have the ice cream in the kitchen or outside or whatever, you know that they're going to end up fighting, whether, one of them's going to pull the other's hair or take the other's toy, whatever. There's no scenario where you cannot have them not start bickering and fight. But you realize, well, ultimately you just want to have ice cream with them. So it doesn't matter that in every possibility, there's always going to be some crying or whatever, but it doesn't matter because that ice cream makes up for it in a way that, crime means not because you're making those memories, right? Those memories that last forever. You and your siblings and your parents eating together ice cream, whatever. Those things last lifetime. That's what you're building there. And you don't remember, your sister or your brother pulling your hair or whatever. Those things go away.
Well, this is, I mean, to create all this mass suffering for that, I don't want a God that was going to be like.
Remember, Jesus went through tons of stuff, more suffering than anybody in the planet because he did.
Well, I don't think that's true. I know this thing that Jesus suffered more than anyone else. Who the fuck is he to say that he suffered more than everyone else?
No, I'll tell you why. There's 3 reasons why. One is, I mean, you saw passion, so you know that, but there's 3 reasons why. One is that he did so knowing how bad it was going to be. He had no illusions. He knew exactly how bad it was going to be. 2, he did it for people like us that don't deserve it. Basically, people that are, it's not like we earned him to do that, right? It's grace. It's a gift. So it's because he loves us. Because he's doing it for people that don't deserve it. And then finally, he's doing it for his enemies, doing it for the people that at that time and others in the future will persecute him. That will, remember, you could spend your whole life theoretically cursing God, and then at the last minute go with Christ, and he'll still accept you just as much as if you did it in the beginning in terms of washing your sins and stuff. Like I said, it's very unlikely that if you live a whole life like that, at the last moment you're going to go with Christ because you'll be so conditioned and so trained to do your own thing that you won't even have the thought of doing that. But regardless, though, if that were to happen, you'll be cleansed just as much. You'll be, he will, covered your sins, and so, that's powerful. I forgot I was going with that. I lost
it doesn't mean that he suffered more than anyone else, and that his story is.
Those are 3 things why he suffered, because no one else. Can you point to one person that has gone, not just has been tortured and stuff, but has had those 3 factors about it? Not just knowing how bad it was going to be, but doing it for someone, meaning they didn't have to do it. It wasn't like they got caught in something and now they have no way out. No, they had way out. They didn't have, but they're doing it.
Okay. Well, when you make up a story, you can put whatever you want into it. So the thing is that we don't even know if Jesus really lived.
Though, grant me that. So, I mean, can you think of someone that suffered more considering those 3 things? Well,
you can just make up you can make up a story and just make up another story that's similar and,
But I'm saying, who can you imagine suffered more than that?
Well, I don't think that I think that it's not right to kind of put a label on who suffered more and who.
You literally made it a contest.
It's not a contest. That's like when Jews say that they suffered more in the Holocaust than blacks did under slavery.
Yeah, I'm against that. I'm against that. Yeah, sure.
It's not a contest. It's
absolutely.
Don't and if you're gonna go and then throw your suffering in people's faces, I suffered more than you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's not what Jesus is doing there. What the example wasn't that he's trying to say he suffered more. The idea is that we all suffer, and yet he knows what it's like to suffer too. He did so willingly, he did so putting himself, and he did so he could reach into creation, so he could pull us out, because he had to go so low that, we all hit, rock bottom, and some lower than others. That's how low he had to go, was to make sure that no matter how bad someone fell, into their sin, into bad stuff, that Jesus will be right there behind them. So even though they're on rock bottom, God's literally right behind them, ready to pick them up. And so, that was all done. It's a rescue mission. It's like Superman. It's just multidimensional. It's not like the guy with the sword who cuts off our enemies. It's something that takes place over, millennia and has a huge, deep structure to it.
Okay. Well, people also, that lots of Muslims and Jews have problem with the fact that Jesus died for your sins. You're supposed to pay for your own sins.
Absolutely. That's why if he comes back now, he'll be killed.
You're supposed to pay for your own sins. You're not supposed
Yeah,
to.
right. And that's called grace. That's why it's a gift. That's why it's called the good news, because
Okay, but okay. I have a
you're
cousin.
condemned to die, but look, good news, you've been pardoned.
I have a cousin who believes that because she has accepted Christ genuinely, that she could go out and murder and steal and rape. And
Let me tell you something.
well, she believes this.
That's an idea, old idea called antinomianism. And it's completely false, because remember I said that people say they love Christ, but they never even really learned who he is. They never took the time to like understand and read his words and all that. So Christ clearly says that if you love me, you will keep my commandments. So right now, I know that I could go and do whatever the hell I want. All the stuff that I was doing before, I was dating 3 girls at one time, and I gave all that up. But he made it easy for me because I got distracted for a long time. but he I gave all that up, right? So right now I could go back to I could do things. I could call people, maybe not, but I don't want to test it, but things would happen, and I realized why, because I've sewn him into my perception of my daily regular perception so much that if I were to do those things, it would just be like it's almost like throwing a bunch of shit on a beautiful table or something that you cherish, and you put a bunch of crap all over it, and it's just you're just like, what am I doing? And
the point, no, but the thing is that the idea that
if you love him,
you can do all these things and then basically get away with it if in the last moment you confess Christ as your Lord and Savior.
No, but remember that because habits die hard, if you get into a habit of not doing that, to think that you're just going to have the ability to just go and change is ridiculous. Now, is it impossible? No, but is it likely? Absolutely not. You're going to habits die hard. It's the longer you stay doing one thing, the more likely you're going to do in the future. I mean, that's just the way it is. And he gave us a way.
But I think people still have you're not taking into consideration that it is part of theology that you can do all these horrible things, then accept Christ, and you're forgiven. And some people have a hard time with that.
Well, look, Paul was a murderer, right? Paul's job for the last few years of his life was killing Christians, was finding Christians, I think men, women, and children, and just massacring just for the sake of it, just because they're Christian. And he was on his way to Damascus to do that, and that's when Jesus blinded them and basically transformed him. And so if we were to say that, we'd be like, oh man, no, I don't like Paul. He killed people. He killed people that were basically begging for their life. People that were running away, trying to, cower and all this stuff. Not cower, but basically trying to, not trying to be bullies or fight back. They're literally pacifists in a way, and he's just killing them mercilessly, whatever. And yet he's the greatest evangelist. He's the greatest person to spread the gospel in history. And it's so God uses us. We are broken vessels to do things great, because like I said, it's all about the movement we go in. Spirituality is about movement. It's not about the matter, the stuff itself. It's about how it's moving. And you can't determine that by looking at the atoms or looking at the composition of something. It's something above and beyond the object or the subject. It's movement. It's higher dimensional, and that's what spirituality is all about. So it's a direction you're moving in. And are you moving towards God, becoming to a point in a million years where you're going to be judging angels, as Paul says, or are you going to be in the million years something where it's best not to think about where that's going to lead, and that kind of depravity and that self-destruction, really, and just constant spiraling black hole. I mean, it's you don't want to have your will become a black hole.
Yeah, well, but not everyone. Some people are going to go to hell because they said, I just can't believe that God would say he's 1 and 3 at the same time.
No. You're missing what I said before, that if you follow your conscience and you know that little voice in your head that tells you, you know, well, man, that's a good thing. Oh, that's a bad thing. Right? If you follow that and you acknowledge it and you respect it and all that stuff, you're gonna see the new creation. Like I said, you're just
no, but you won't see the new creation if you reject Jesus because you don't think he's God.
No, this is the way it works, right? Because remember, there are people in the Old Testament that never, you know, said anything about Jesus, and you have even Job, who may have not even been Jewish, but yet he had a direct connection with God. So I think that the idea, got to be real careful about it. I think what it is, the disqualifying factor, really, I think, is that you deny Christ, that you know about Christ, and then you deny him. Because if you don't
deny God, but
let me say, that's different from just that you don't know about him, like you've never heard about him, or you heard about him, but you just never took the time, and it's never much of an issue, you know, and you just, you know, never, whatever. You just like, maybe I'll read about that next week, and that person, Jesus, and you never get to it or whatever, you know. So, you know, that's not, you know, that's an issue. The issue comes when you are like, you're like a Satanist, and you're just like, all right, you know, fuck Jesus, I don't like him, you know, whatever, you know. Or maybe
people who reject Jesus, people who reject Jesus because he's not God are not making it into the heaven.
Well, again, it's one thing to say, you know, be agnostic and not know which God, or not know that what. If
you reject Jesus because he said he was God, then you're not going to a good place.
If you consciously reject him, right? You say, not that I don't know if he's God, or you know, I haven't checked or anything like that, but you're basically like, you know, you just don't, you know, you're trying to like I said, trying to impress this, you know, Satan and your Satan buddies, and trying to say, look how bad I am.
I don't think that's impressive. I think that there's people in this world that don't do anything wrong except for the fact, or don't do anything wrong according to the Bible, except for the fact that they just don't believe a man can be God. And I don't think that
if they follow their conscience, they'll be in new creation. If they went against their conscience, different story.
Well, I think their conscience is telling them that man cannot be God.
Are you sure about that?
Many people reject Jesus because they say he's not God.
Yeah, but that's like your intellect. That's a little different. That's like your credulity, right? You're saying, you know, I can't believe that, you know, 2,000 years. But that's not the part of you that's the same part of you that, like, if you see someone about to like punch a baby, or someone that's about to like, put a cat in a blender, you know, you're going to be like, you know, that part of you is going to go, oh my God, that's horrible. That's not the same part. You know, credulity, you know, that's just a part of you that's like, no way is that true, versus, oh, that's wrong. Oh, no, you can't do that. You know, it's
no, it is. No, people believe that it is wrong to say man is God.
Well, okay, so you're talking about in certain people that are already religious.
Yes.
And so that kind of classical theistic belief comes from the Bible, because, you know, the Hindus don't say anything about, you know, man being God being a bad thing, you know.
Buddhists no. You know, and many Hindus believe that God does not take physical form.
Yeah, but every Hindu, remember, Hinduism was essentially a quasi-religion created by Indologists in the 19th century, because what you end up having is a bunch of people in India that say they have some deity that they worship, and they're all different for the most part. There's millions of them, and they all have different rituals and different expectations, but there's a little bit of an overlap in the sense that the stories of the gods and the emanations of them, like the multiplication, all come from a single historical heritage as source, but it's all loose. There's no codification to it. You know, this was later that you have white anthropologists basically looking through it and trying to piece it together, and that's why they were, you know, there was no Bible for the Hindus. But, you know, so they said, okay, we got the Upanishads, which is kind of, you know, but it's not central, but it's like, okay, that kind of works. And then they had the Bhagavad Gita, which is really just, I think, 2 stories. You know, it's not necessarily like a huge sweeping, you know, creation text. So the Hinduism is it's a thing that people do, but this idea of it being holistic is very, it's an artifact of, like, you know.
Okay, wait, but you're getting, look, people who are very religious, even Christians, there are even Christians who deny the Trinity because they say that it's idolatry.
Well, you know, again, if you're confused about it, right? If you truly believe that, you know, Jesus is not God, and and not because of every evidence, but you just, like I said, you never got to it, or you're convinced of something else. As long as you're doing what you think is right, ultimately, he's gonna remember. He wants people that basically follow their conscience, people that he could trust, that he love and love back, not someone that's just there to use or be afraid.
Okay, but some people follow their consciousness and say God would never become a man.
I mean, I don't know how they get there, but okay, so Paul talks about like the weaker brother, so there's this question about, because I think it's in Corinthians where they say, hey, we want to eat this meat, but we find out that the market we get it from, that the people selling to us have prayed over it, because they're pagan. And so they're asking Paul, are we allowed to eat this? Even though they sacrificed this, I'm about to eat some pork and they sacrificed the pig to some other, non-Christian deity. Is this okay to eat? And so Paul had a very complex answer. He said, basically, if it's just you and you really don't care and you don't see like what's the big fuss, right? Your conscience isn't bothered, basically. Yeah. And essentially there is no problem because nothing you put into you defiles you, right? Jesus said that. But he says, if there's someone in your church or in your congregation, someone around you that what he calls like the weaker brother, so someone that is caught up in that's hung up with that. So while you think it's no big deal, they're really caught up with it. They're like, yeah, but maybe it's wrong, And so he says that in that case, if they're caught up like that, then it's probably wrong for them. But if for you, it's not. And then he says, if you're in a situation where you're, let's say, okay, I'll give you an example. Let's say you can smoke a cigarette and have a couple of beers, and then and that's it. You don't go crazy. Where there's someone in your crew that is trying to quit, and if they have one cigarette, it's all over. They're going to start smoking again, drinking, and so in that situation, while you could have the cigarette and be fine, it's better for you to not have that cigarette and beer around your weaker friend, essentially. And so I think that essentially shows us that this is not about these kinds of physical actions or rituals. It's about conscience, and and Jesus.
But wait, you can't mix not eating meat polluted by idols.
Analogy, man.
Yeah, but that's different than denying Jesus is God. Those are two different.
Remember, the outcome was: is this sinful? Is this something that's going to send me to hell if I eat this meat that was sacrificed to a pagan god? Does that mean I'm going to throw out Christ's salvation and wash away his blood or something? I mean, that's literally.
If you deny he's God according to Christianity,
that's what they're saying. It's like because they would think that's what they're asking. They're saying, if I eat this meat that I know was sacrificed to another deity, am I basically denying him? I mean, they were caught up in that. They didn't know, And
you're relating. No, I'm sorry. You cannot relate a non-prohibition to saying that Jesus is not God. You cannot relate those two things.
No, but I'm not saying those two things. I'm saying that these people were afraid about losing their salvation, and the problem with
for doing nothing, and
your salvation.
He clarified it for them and said, "No, you won't lose your salvation
if you have no qualms about it." But if you feel you have qualms about it, then you shouldn't. And if you're around people that do have qualms about it, you shouldn't tempt them. You should.
So if you're a Christian around a non-Trinitarian Christian, you shouldn't bring up the Trinity.
No. I gave the example with drinking or smoking, where you could have a cigarette.
Okay, but we're talking about the Trinity. Let's talk about the Trinity. So if there's a non-Trinitarian Christian in the room, you shouldn't bring up the Trinity.
No one said that.
Okay, so then where's the analogy? I'm not getting it.
The analogy is if you were to do something that would jeopardize your salvation, your chance of getting to heaven.
Like denying Jesus is God, yes.
Yes, yeah. Like something where that if you do it, you're not going to go to heaven anymore.
Like denying Jesus is God.
What we see, whatever. Okay, all right. I think you're something. You got a spirit that's telling you to say that over and over again. You may not notice, but
no. But I'm trying to drive because you're trying.
What I'm trying to say is that whatever that be, that you'll lose your salvation. What that passage from I think it's Corinthians is basically saying is that what that rests on is your attitude, your conscience, your attitude to your conscience And so that is the what makes the difference. And I think that's very informative. That's very telling about, the nature of this stuff. And,
Okay, well,
and then
there are
Molinism.
there are
Molinism
Chris-
says that
there
God
are
judges you based
Christians.
on what you would have done, not what you did do.
There are Christians who think Jehovah's Witnesses are going to hell
Yeah,
because
I
they
know.
don't believe Jesus is God.
Yeah, sure.
Because they don't believe. I mean, so you're missing the point that this is not abstaining from.
God can deal with disagreement, man.
Not well, according to
He wants
Christianity,
truth
not.
and spirit. He wants your heart. So if you got,
And he wants you to believe Jesus is God, according to you.
well, I mean, that's the truth.
Okay, and if you don't believe that, you're not making it.
No one said that. So everyone in the Old Testament never heard Jesus Christ. No,
So
Adam-
you're saying after the advent of Jesus, if you don't believe Jesus is God, you can still make it to heaven.
there's nothing that stipulates it that it's only afterwards. The theology is, like the.
Okay, I know, but I'm asking about after Jesus' death, anyone who does not believe that Jesus is God can still go to heaven. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that God picks people to go to heaven not based on what they did or what they didn't do, as much as what they would have done.
What about what they actually believe?
That plays into what they would have done.
Okay, well, the would have done is not worship Jesus as God and say Jesus is not God.
So if that's what they would have done, right? So all
To
things
say Jesus
all
is
things
not
being
God.
equal, all things being equal, if what they would have done would be deny Christ, then yeah, they're not. Why would God force anyone that doesn't want to be with Him for eternity to be with Him for eternity?
Well, these people think they want to be with God for eternity. They just don't think Jesus
Obviously
is
they
God.
don't. If they're denying Christ, they obviously don't.
Well, they're not denying Jesus or his work or that he was the Messiah. They're just denying he's God.
But they're saying that I don't want to be with Jesus. They don't want to wake up in eternity with Jesus. They don't like him. They don't want to be around him. So he's not going to force.
No,
them.
they do like him. It's not that they don't like him. It's just they want to wake up and be with God and Jesus is an angel. And
so if they don't dislike him, then what is the problem with him being God?
Because some people believe some people believe that
no, but if that's the case, though, if you realize that's the case, what's the problem?
Because God is not supposed to enter space-time. That's why.
No, he is. That's called the parousia, right? That's the second coming, right? And remember, I said Christ.
Wait! You can't. No. Or you believe in the parousia or whatever. You believe in the second. You believe God. God will. No, not everyone believes God will physically embody it.
If you don't,
not every. I wasn't taught that. I was a non-Trinitarian. I was non-Trinitarian Christian. We did not believe Jesus was God. We believed in Jesus and we followed Jesus.
You don't believe in a second coming? I mean, you probably
no, but they didn't believe it was. They didn't believe it was God taking physical shape to come onto the earth.
That's fine, but they I mean, that's not fine, but they still believe in a second coming, though. A lot of them, they still think that. But
not the second coming of Christ, not the second coming of God.
God's favorite human, basically. God's.
Well, okay, but to say that God entered physical space-time is idolatry.
No, it's not, because it's incarnation. But God could do anything he wants. Why are you going to limit God? You say God can't incarnate.
Because
he created everything.
He doesn't want to, because then people might worship him in his physical form.
Well, remember when he was here, see, that's when I first read the first chapter of John, which was so amazing. You realize that John says that the creator of everything, of time and space, was in the universe with people, and yet no one was able to recognize him for who he was. And when I first read that, I couldn't fucking believe it. You would think, like, the CEO of a fucking company walks through, you wouldn't recognize this guy created everything. You don't recognize him. And it's like, because we are that's what sin is. We are so far removed from our true nature of what we are and who we are and where we came from. We're so like lost in that sense that we can't even recognize something that's fundamental to us, our own creator, the person we're made in the image of. And so that's what makes sin so wretched, because it's this beautiful human being creature and it's lost, doesn't even know, like there's all this beautifulness, and you're not even seeing it, and you don't realize it, you know.
Okay. When God appeared before Moses in the burning bush, he told him, "See, I did not take shape. You did not see shape. So do not make any idols." God purposely did not take shape in the Old Testament.
Right. So that people, no, not necessarily. Let's put it. I thought about this the other day, actually, and I'm glad you made me, because there's probably no other reason for me to bring this up. You see, when they had a deity statue, right? What they would do is, let's say I would create a statue of a deity that I want to worship, for whatever, the power of this or whatever. And then I make the statue, and then I do the ritual prayers, and then the spirit inhabits the statue. Now, if someone comes and then smashes that statue, like some white national Christians are like, bow smashes or whatever, right? They come, which I'm not for, but let's say they do it. The spirit is not destroyed. It just, all I have to do is just find a new rock to carve into a statue, to then have the ritual to bring the spirit back in, and then do the, and then worship and all that stuff. So I was thinking like, well, yeah, God never had a statue, but then it hit me. Wait a minute. God, the representation of God wasn't a statue, which is, an object in the universe. What was it? It was the temple, the holies of holies. So essentially the temple as a structure, both its outer and inner parts, were essentially the closest thing to a statue of God. But it wasn't a statue where you just stand in front of it and you worship it, or it's an object that you behold. No, it's a space that you go inside of. It's something you occupy, you inhabit. It's not just something you behold like an object. No, it's something that you are immersed in, that you literally go into, that has extra space and all that. And I realized that, and I was like, oh shit. So yes, in this way, he's not making himself into a statue, but he's being represented there. And that is as
God's presence is immaterial.
Yeah, because it's presence, right? So remember,
it's immaterial. It's immaterial. It's not in the temple. It's not like
you don't look, guy. They don't. You don't do your. The people don't reside inside the temple walls, right? There's a space, inner space within the temple, and that's the whole point. Is that there's a inner space here that's different from the other space, and it's another form of presence. And so instead of having a statue which looks like someone or has a certain feature, no, the closest representation of God, the most fidelitous, is one where it's an inner sanctum space from where you are present in. It's a form of presence, a form of being, and so
that's immaterial. That's immaterial.
Absolutely, yes.
And okay, so then God didn't. He doesn't inhabit the air. He doesn't inhabit the vacuum.
He could, but you see, okay. So the Orthodox the Eastern Orthodox, they have a great distinction between energy of God and essence of God. And so your energies would be like, let's say, the laws of gravity and things like that, keeping that going, right? That would be all God's energies, right? But his essence is a little different. So you could think of his energies as like his impersonal forces, impersonal powers, whereas his essence is personal. It's actually something you could, relate to and commune with and all that stuff, and be judged by. And so that's really different. So when you have like, things that are being created and things that are sustained in the universe, it's he's doing it, but doing it in a sense from afar or remotely in a way. Although remote is not good because it's a structure still, but he's not, he's like personally not there, but his effects are there. And so that's different from him as a person, him in a communicative being, relational state. Like for instance, when you have general revelation of looking at nature and saying, wow, this is so complicated. No one could have, nature could have not just built itself, and then you have special revelation through Jesus Christ and that in the New Testament and stuff. And then you realize, oh, wow, God came into the world. He came into the world as like a person, just like me and you. And he had basically good news, which is, you're condemned to, be dead. Basically, you're on your way to the static world, hell. And instead, God has basically has bought a way out for you. But you have to accept the gift. You know, if you don't accept the gift, then you can't get it. You know, if you don't open it, if you don't, you know, if you just leave it in the mail room, you know, it's, you know, doesn't matter if he gave it to you. It's you left it in the mailroom.
I find it very odd that no Jewish person on earth was looking for God to come down as a man, and then he came, and then the Jews were like, "That's not what
they were expecting." The Jews at the time, like I said, like John and everybody, were expecting a warrior. They were expecting like a King David. You know,
they weren't expecting God. King David wasn't God.
Yeah,
they weren't expecting.
They were expecting a Messiah. And
not a god, but not a god. That would have been.
I mean, you understand what a Messiah is? A Messiah means to.
It's not a god.
Well, technically, it is. It's atonement, right? So, what Messiah's role is to bring at one mit, is to bring, to bring together people, or in that case, the Jews, with Adonai, to bring them, you know, in immediacy, to bring them together, to stop the sin, right? And so that's that's their goal there, you know. And
look, if any person, not just Jesus, any person, let's forget Jesus, any person.
I can never forget Jesus.
No, but I'm just saying any person who went up to a Jew from the Old Testament and said, "I'm God," they'd say, "You're an idolater." Any person.
If who went up to somebody? What?
If anyone went up to an Old Testament Jew and said, "I am God," they would say this is idolatry. Any person.
Yeah, Jesus, that's why you think Jesus was killed? Absolutely.
Well, because he was killed because
it was the Pharisees.
Yeah, because it made no sense. It makes no sense that God would use Judaism and then come as a man.
God flipped it on you. God, don't sleep on God. You really think God's going to be predictable? Like that you're going to predict when God has like so much in store? Like you don't know. Even
I don't think he would confuse people like that.
His ultimate plans. And
so you're going to confuse the Jews. You're trying to save the Jews, but you're going to confuse them now.
Jesus was a Jew. And my last name is Sephardic Jewish. So I got
you're missing the point. The point is that Jesus came to be the Messiah of the Jews, but he did it in such a way so that they would just not believe him because it just didn't make sense.
A lot of Jewish people went to him. Now,
but a lot didn't.
Well, obviously not all of them did. Okay, so again, in Matthew 10, Jesus says, "Don't be fooled. I have not come to bring peace. I have come to be a sword to separate, husband, brother and sister, father and son, mother and daughter, he goes through all these different relationships. So he's clear. He's like saying not that he's a sword to stab people, but that instead of him bringing peace to everyone coming all together and happy. No, he's like, don't be fooled. No, I'm going to cut you from those ties that you had, and you're going to be in a new group with a new affinity, a new family with people you would have never expected or maybe even wanted to be with, people that like you would, you felt no connection with. Like, and then now you realize, oh my God, we're brothers in Christ. We've been adopted, both been adopted by God. I mean that's the thing. And look, he's really clear about that. So,
well, from the Jewish perspective,
if you love your father and mother more than you love me, you're stupid. You're basically an idiot.
From a Jewish perspective, dividing up the community like that sounds satanic. It sounds like it sounds like they believe
there was somebody ripping babies out of people's arms and saying, "No, you can't live here." No, you know who does that? The ethno-nationalists do that. No, but what? No, the difference here is that this is people following their heart. This is people who say, I want to go one way, and someone says, I want to go somewhere, and that's the free will we have, and it is tough. And that's, it is like saying, basically saying, I don't feel the same way about Jesus than you. And, I don't want to live my life in a way where he decides what's best for me, stuff or whatever. And
well, because they didn't want to give up the old, they didn't want to give up the old law. They didn't want to believe that now idolaters aren't killed. They didn't want to believe that now you can just get away with all this kinds of nonsense.
You keep, and may I say disingenuously so, calling it idolatry. That's just your kind of
No, I didn't know. I didn't mean just, no, I mean, once Jesus came, the commandment to kill idolaters was no longer in place, and maybe somebody wouldn't believe that God would do that.
Yeah. Again, you can't predict what God's going to do, and you can't just say, "Well, I expect God to do this." It's like you're not God, right? You. It's almost like a little kid saying, "I got, I can think of a better way to do this," and you know nothing. You just looked at the situation.
Okay, that's the same as saying that's like, okay, there's no difference between saying I've come and now you can practice idolatry, and there's no difference between that and saying I've come and now you can practice murder. There's no difference.
Why do you keep saying idolatry? Jesus.
You're missing. I'm not talking about Jesus. I'm talking about regular. I'm talking about regular idolatry. I'm talking about before Jesus came, if a Jew bowed before an idol, it was the death penalty. Jesus came and says it's no longer the death penalty. It's no longer the death penalty. That makes that.
They don't need to be. That the law.
You might as well get rid of. You might as well allow murder. Because
the law has been fulfilled. But there are aspects of the law that are still going. Like, for instance,
why is idolatry okay?
Love God with all your heart, mind, soul, strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's still in play.
Idolatry.
The commandments are love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as like you would yourself. And so that's
idolatry. Okay, idolatry is worse than murder. So you allow things that are worse than murder to happen, and that's why people don't believe Jesus is God.
My friend. That's your interpretation of the scripture. It's not.
It allows idolatry. Jesus allows idolatry. He has no problem with it. You want to be an idolater? Go ahead.
No, we don't. We don't make statues of Jesus and
I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about permitting it. I'm talking about permitting regular Gentiles to practice idolatry. Why would God allow something worse than murder to take place under His direction?
God allows murder and all this stuff because I told you He's giving us a certain space. But ultimately, everything will be returned and everything will be just because He's going to put everything in its proper place.
God does not. You're not allowed to murder people. I don't think in Christianity you're allowed to murder people.
No. God could do whatever God wants. God created. God can bring into existence. He could take away out of existence. And for most souls, all He's doing is taking one soul from one area to another because we're eternal. So it's not like we go away when we die. He's just taking us and putting us from one place to another. That's it. He could do whatever.
But you're saying that God lifted His
right to do what He wants with us. Okay, it's just that He is so just and so perfect and so righteous that He's not like that. That He's actually set up this whole thing so it could be voluntary, so it could be loving and done in a beautiful way that's not coercive and evil, and that actually goes with the sentiments we have in the.
Who said banning idolatry is evil? Who said that's evil?
Why are you so obsessed with idolatry? I've never
because it's very important. Exactly. You're a Christian, so you don't care about idolatry, and then we can't continue because you don't give a fuck about idolatry.
Why are you so concerned? I've talked about politics for almost a decade online, and I've never met someone that has talked about idolatry and said the word idolatry so many times in a row.
No, you wouldn't understand. A Christian wouldn't understand that. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't understand. You wouldn't understand why people are upset about idolatry. You just would never understand that because you're a Christian.
Well, I understand.
Never.
Well, first of all, you have to understand what idolatry is, right?
I know what idolatry is.
Worship something as God that's not God, or when you say you worship that God embodies a certain statue and that you worship that statue as if God was truly in there and not somewhere else. That's what idolatry means. Either one of those two, either putting something on a pedestal higher than God, or worshiping a statue as if God was imbuing it and doing it for like divination purposes and stuff like that. That's what idolatry is. That's all it is.
I'm just saying a Christian
is not
a Christian would believe that anybody on this earth has the right to practice idolatry whenever they want. And I'm saying that is not the way God set it up. And why would you allow that? Who the fuck would allow idolatry? Except a Christian.
Okay, so I mean, why? Like, do you know why idolatry is so insidious and so hurtful and
Well,
disastrous?
I know why it is, but you obviously don't,
Why? Tell me.
because you allow it.
No, but I'm saying, but what about
Are
it?
you going to kill idolaters? Are you going to kill idolaters?
No, what I'm saying is, why?
No, so
like,
then you don't think it's not bad. You
know
don't think it's that.
It does.
You don't think it's that
Okay,
bad. You don't think it's as bad as murder.
Okay, let me ask you this: if we change the name, we changed it to some other word, would you still be able to identify it even though it has a different name?
Yes, idolatry is
How would you
believing God
identify
is.
it? If it wasn't called idolatry anymore, it was called something else. How would you
Say
identify
God is, if you say God is more than one or God takes shape, that's idolatry.
No. At best, it's still wrong, but at best that would be heresy, not idolatry, because it's
idolatry is to believe God took shape.
It's a false doctrine. It's a true doctrine. The Trinity is not fly by night. It didn't just come about like in the 1800s or something. The Trinity goes back to the first generations coming out of Jesus's time on earth. So and we have lots of evidence for that. I can send you tons of fucking evidence on that.
Wait, we're not talking about Jesus. I'm talking about classical pagan idolatry. Christianity allows classical pagan idolatry. I'm saying
a God who kill pagans.
A God who hates idolatry would not allow that.
Yeah, but God also loves people that are made in His image.
Does God allow murder? Does God allow murder?
No.
Okay, then why would He allow idolatry?
Well, when you say allow, right? Obviously, He does allow it, right? Because I could go and you could be murdered.
Okay. So you're saying. So you're saying.
Sin. Does it put you closer to God or farther away from God?
Okay, so if we lived in a pure Christian civilization, nobody would be punished for murder because God didn't just. Are you saying nobody would be punished for murder under a pure Christian civilization?
What? When you say a pure Christian,
if we were all Christian, all Trinitarian Christian, and everyone was following the Bible, and everyone did everything they were supposed to do, but there was a murderer, would that murderer be punished in a purely Christian society that didn't?
So it's still in the fallen world.
Okay, yes, but would Christians under Christianity, is it, so you're saying Christianity has nothing about putting murderers to death? There's no command for that. There's no need for that. No need for that.
I mean, where else would it come from? Look,
where would it come from? It's not coming from your Bible.
You're saying the Bible doesn't say that it's wrong?
No, it doesn't come. Obviously, it's not coming from the New Testament. No, I'm talking about punishing. I'm not talking about, oh, it's wrong. I'm talking about an actual punishment. Are there no punishments for murder in Christianity?
You mean in terms of cosmic, like terms of like?
No, I'm talking about I'm talking about here on this earth. No, I'm talking about here on this earth. Are you punished for murder under Christianity? Why are you laughing?
Because I said it's queer. It's why it's queer to say the least. Look, man.
It's queer to ask if people are put to death for murder or are punished for.
Are you an atheist? You're an atheist, right?
I'm an agnostic.
Yeah, but you lean atheist, don't you?
No, I'm not an atheist. I'm an agnostic. I don't know if God exists. I don't.
Come on, you took Pascal's wager and you made your mind up.
Okay, now you're just trying to smear me with this because you can't answer the question. You can't answer the question. You can't answer.
Look,
you allow murder and idolatry now. So now Christianity doesn't punish murder or idolatry, and we're supposed to believe.
Remember in Genesis where he says on the seventh day he took a rest after building the first 6 days?
Yeah.
Do you think God needs sleep? He's tired? No.
I don't see how this is related.
Right? So what do you mean by rest? I'll tell you what he means. You ever heard of a restroom? So what do you do in the restroom? Do you sleep in the restroom? No. You basically excuse yourself from the situation to go do personal things essentially. But the idea isn't that you're sleeping there, it's to put you outside of that situation. So when God is in the seventh day in rest, he's not like, oh man, I gotta go stretch and be tired. No, he's basically saying, okay, this is everything set. I'm now removing myself from the situation. I'll be back later. And that's what's going on. So he's done that. And and then there's the incarnation, and then there's the ongoing Holy Spirit that's always with us. So God's always with us.
Okay. It just does. It sounds like in Christianity you are neither punished for murder nor idolatry. On this earth, not on this earth.
Punishment.
On this earth, because you know what? I do want to live in a society where murderers are put in jail.
So you want justice, right?
Well, it doesn't sound like I would get it from you or your Jesus. Okay, well, you're laughing, but you're
not the source of justice, but God is the source. Thank God I'm not the source of justice. That'd be fucked.
Okay, so we shouldn't punish murderers. Is that what you're saying? We shouldn't punish murderers?
Okay.
Is that what you're saying, that we shouldn't punish murderers?
Okay. So the peniology, right? The philosophy of penal systems and those kinds of like detentions and stuff. What's the point of them, right? Do we just say, hey, you did something, so we want to just make you hurt for a while, or we want to make sure that you get what you gave out, or what's the point, right? And eventually in this society, the point is that you did something that's dangerous, and you did it on purpose. It wasn't just an accident. So if it was an accident, it'd be a civil suit, right? But it's on purpose, and so or extremely reckless, right? Where you knew something bad was going to happen. And so you did this thing on purpose, and that makes other people kind of, because now we don't know if you're just going to keep doing this. So we're going to put you, depending on what you did, we're going to put you away from society. If you're really bad, we'll put you really far away from society, but you get the idea there. And so, maybe you need 5 years to think about, and to be kind of separated. And then in those 5 years, you could kind of just like reflect and like, oh man, that was dumb, and then maybe you could be able to come back. But ultimately, what it's all about isn't just to like get even, right? Because as God says, revenge is His and only His. Make room for His wrath. What's going on instead is that we are removing people out of society because we want people. What the laws are there for are not to punish people. The laws are not there to restrict anything. What they're really there for is to protect people that are living their lives peaceably and following their conscience peaceably. The law is there to ensure those people can do that. They can be protected. And so when you commit crimes, you're basically endangering people from going about their business and being peaceful. And so whenever that's the case, you have to be removed out of society, and it's just so it's not about like getting even. It's not about like sticking it to them. It's just, it's very, very scientific in a way. Really, it's very, very, very dry ethics.
Well, it's to make sure that murder doesn't happen. That's why we punish people.
Like I said, to protect the people that are living peacefully.
Well, the thing is that idolatry is worse than murder. So to allow that is,
Worse for whom?
It's worse for God and for humanity and for everybody.
How is it worse for God? Nothing hurts God.
Because God hates idolatry.
I feel upset, but ultimately, he's not dependent on anything.
Well, okay, you just want a lower standard for yourself. You just want a low standard. You just don't want to be held accountable.
So Arturo, do you believe in capital punishment?
Capital punishment means specifically like
penalty.
Okay, yeah. The thing about it is, I don't know how it works in other countries, but the way it works in the U.S., it's not that I don't think people deserve to be executed if they did certain things.
It sounds like no.
Yeah, because I don't want to give that to the government. But one is because I don't want to give that power to the government. But two, I also think it's not the best way to deter the problem. And also,
what's the best way of deterring?
It's really expensive. So I don't know what it's like in Britain, but in America, if you're on death row for like 5 or 10 years, there's more tax money spent on you in those 5 or 10 years than if you would be just a regular lifelong inmate in a regular cell. I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot of waste of money. It's like lawyers and all this stuff. And so, I consider that.
You can't make up your mind.
Letting people go out free. What?
Oh, you just want to let them go.
No. I'm saying that I consider how people consider it as being let go free, like when they're killed, that they don't have to sit in jail. They're basically free to sleep for the rest
I'm
of
not
the.
getting a straight answer from you.
No, I don't. Look, I said I don't believe it. I think it's. I don't think it should be the case. But it's not because I don't think they deserve to die. I think they do deserve to die, but I don't think the government should have role in that. And I think it's.
So what? You say people should take the law in their own hands. Somebody kills your
No.
wife, you go and kill them, or just forget about it. Forget about it. You're
No,
saying
I never said
forget
that.
about it.
I never said that. Don't.
Well, so what are you saying? What are you saying?
Okay. It seems to me.
Them?
It seems to me from what he's saying is that you cannot get to punishing criminals without secular laws. You have to go outside Christianity to actually do this. You need secular, non-Christian thinking in order to punish people for murder, for theft, for all these different kinds of things. Because Christianity doesn't really touch on any of that.
Christianity has
I think you're kind of
nothing
confused
to
about what
offer.
Christianity is about. See, this is why I say that Islam is not really a religion as much as it's a political ideology with a theological dimension.
It's a political and legal system.
Yeah, with a theological dimension. Yeah.
Yeah, and
That's exactly what it is. Yeah,
what makes it better.
That's why it's
than this Christocrat.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting to the point that you say if we didn't have secular laws, then maybe Christians wouldn't punish murder. I mean, that's absurd.
So you have this assumption that the what we call secular is wholly divorced or has nothing to do with the Christian sphere at all, and I think that's false.
Okay, but you have to add these addendums.
Say about the death penalty.
No, it's not at all. I think it's very simple. God wants your heart. So
it doesn't
best
say
society
that.
is one where people are allowed to follow their conscience. And the laws are there to protect that.
It doesn't say anything like that.
No, look. In the Declaration of Peace,
you just made up this crap. You just made up this crap. It says nothing like that in the New Testament.
Okay. So yeah. Jefferson said it, right? He said,
Jefferson did.
All men are created equal, endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. And among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And that governments are instituted among men to preserve these rights. So that in a nutshell is the whole name of the game. That's what.
Okay, where is that in the Bible? That's additional addendums. I'm looking for it from the Bible.
It's not the New Testament.
That is a truth that is literally biblical truth. We are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. That's very clear in the Bible.
What are they? What are these rights?
Like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Where does it say that in the New Testament? Where does it say that in the New Testament? It says nothing.
That you shall not kill, and that you are allowed to follow God or not. So you should not kill. That's life. You should not. You should follow God. Willingly. That's liberty. And happiness is in that sense. Back in the 1800s or 1700s, happiness was basically your ability to follow your moral perfection. Not necessarily pleasure, but actually being a good person.
In the Old Testament, the New Testament says nothing about the law.
It says lots about the law.
Give us an example.
Jesus says, "I've come not to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law."
So, which law is he supposed to fulfill?
The law of the Old Testament, the law of Moses.
Okay, so why aren't we stoning sodomites?
The law, the Torah, the Mosaic law.
Okay, but we're not Jews, are we? Most people are not Jews.
What was that?
I said most people are not Jews. The Torah is for Jews.
Yeah.
So what laws was Jesus supposed to have fulfilled?
Those Mosaic laws. He's fulfilled them. Basically, after Jesus was around, those laws in their strictness wasn't, they were not nullified, but basically they've come to fruition. They come to fulfillment. He's come to, they're done. They're finished. It's like they've come for a purpose, and their purpose is ready, finished.
Right. Well, so the
purpose was, not mixing two kinds of fabrics or eating shellfish or whatever. That was all to keep Israel
separate from the other nations. We are Gentiles.
Yeah, but I'm saying is those laws were given to Israel to keep them separate from other nations. But once you had Jesus work on the cross, there was no reason to keep this nation of Israel separate. I mean, that's why in 70 AD you had the destruction of the temple.
Don't agree. They think they're God's chosen people with their eternal covenant, and you're saying they're not needed. Is that what you're saying? Not needed anymore.
Remember, I'm not from the UK, so I don't have the guilt trip. You can't guilt trip me to think like, oh man, someone disagrees with you. It's like, yeah.
I'm not guilt tripping you. I'm asking you a legitimate question.
Wow.
You're saying Jews don't need to exist?
No, they can believe what they want. That's what's beautiful about my country is that we can disagree. We can have public discussions, but ultimately, if you don't, you want to disengage or you want to just go in your private life and live the way, you could do that, and that's beautiful, and that's exactly what God wants.
You're just waffling now, aren't you? We're talking about what Jews are supposed to do, and you say it doesn't matter, and you don't care.
Wait, I don't care about Jesus?
I just said Jews and the Old Testament. So what are Jews supposed to do?
I think a lot of Jewish women are beautiful.
Okay, you're obviously. I guess you've come to the end of the line, and you don't want to have a serious discussion anymore.
Well, you're saying that I said I hate Jews. I never said that.
I didn't say you hated Jews. I said, what are Jews supposed to do if you say out of nowhere that the laws have been fulfilled by Jesus? Obviously, the Jews don't agree, and you. Yeah,
but no, I mean they don't follow all those rules. They don't follow they're not doing sacrifices. They're still sacrificing goats.
What?
Are they still sacrificing goats?
No,
they don't. So they're not doing everything they used to do.
It's called kaporot.
They're obviously not doing everything they used to do. look, within Jews, you have Reformed, you have Orthodox.
Yeah, that's because the temple. They do everything they can without the temple. They do everything they can without the temple. But
are you Jewish?
I'm not Jewish. No.
What's your background?
I'm mixed white.
Just white? That's it?
A little Turkish. Just European.
Turkish?
A little Turkish.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah.
Little Turkish. Why?
No, I'm just, physiognomy or whatever the fuck it's called.
Well, the point is that, you have to, when you want to outlaw murder, you kind of have to go outside and say that, we're either going to look at the Old Testament or we're going to look at Roman law or we're going to look at the civic.
So Augustine talked about the two cities, right? The city of God and the city of man. So and Augustine is not someone from, not even 500 years ago. He's from 1500 years ago. And so that just shows you this idea that there's a sphere that is the divine, or even like in Europe where you had the kings that were, basically ruled the secular level. And then you had the divine, like the Holy Roman Church and all that stuff. And they ruled on spiritual matters. And it was like that for, over a millennium and a half, where that was just the way it was. The church was.
Yeah, and that's why you allow paganism. And that's why you're losing your country to all these pagans, because you just allow it.
I'm talking about Europe, 15,500 years. The reason why we're losing our, quote unquote, losing our country, we're not losing our country. We're losing confidence in our country. That's what's happening. And so the real issue, if you want to know, when did the Bible fall out of favor? The Bible was only in favor for about less than 150 years in America, right? So at the Revolution, because we shook off all the old institutions, especially from Europe and stuff, like the state churches and whatnot, we started saying, well, where are we going to get our authority from, right? We can't just just be tyrants and stuff. So they went and looked at the Bible. And so that civilization from about 1794, 1795, or let's be real generous, 1791, and then bring it to about 1914. And what really kicked the Bible out of the public square in America, and no one talks about this except me and Mark Knoll, because that's where I got it from, is that, historian, is that it went leading up to the Civil War. Both sides were vehemently, citing the Bible as why slavery should end or why slavery should stay, and this really confused a lot of Americans. where to the point they started saying, man, I mean, how could people be so so prominent and say, like they're so sure that it's yes or it's no and slavery, and they became disillusioned. They said, you know what, I don't know if I could put that kind of faith in the Bible, or at least for public things, maybe private things, but not public things. And so at the same time, you had the rise of science. And so people started looking to science, saying, "Hey, wait, that looks objective. That looks like something we could, base our." And so, essentially, by World War I, because World War I was so horrific and such a, it really killed modernism for a lot of people. People were they were looking forward and optimistic about technology and all this stuff. And then World War I happened, and they saw like all this technology was just used to kill people. And so by that time, basically, people have just lost hope, and then looked at science, all this stuff is just all despotic. And so that was the vestiges. That was it. And what I'm talking about is not like how many people went to church. What I'm talking about is like in terms of the public reason, in terms of like, like with the university and stuff, how they're thinking and what they cite and stuff. The whole idea of like people citing the Bible in that kind of rational way, like they used to between 1790 and 1914. It just, after that, it's no more. And you had a residual effect in the public where they, but that then fades away as well. But Mark Noll made something really important, and he said, even though that number fluctuates and it's not even as high as some people think it is in terms of how many Christians there are in America in that sense, he says, regardless of that, there are more Bible translations coming out of America than any other country, and we have been on top, and that's never dipped. And so I think what that shows me is that regardless of whatever happens, there's a core, small, maybe elite, you want to call them a group of people in this country that the Christians, they take it seriously. They're very fruitful with it, and they could kind of keep the fire going. And when you realize that leadership, you only need 10% or so of the populace to be leaders. Everyone else is just a follower, essentially. Tim Keller said that. So. You're gonna have to have that happen and
Okay, well, you allow heinous things to take place in the name of your tolerance.
I tell you, okay, all right.
You do. You allow heinous things to take place because of your tolerance, and I don't think God would tolerate that kind.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, tolerance means that it is to allow people to hurt one another. That's exactly what tolerance means. Okay, all right.
Well, it happens. You allow people to practice all kinds of unbiblical things.
No, okay, all right.
Okay, well, some people would just say that they don't think God would tolerate that.
That's okay. Like I said, God has given them free will, and everyone will end up where they deserve to be. Or they're gifted.
Look what your Christianity has done to America. So
what? Build it, inspire it. What?
Allow everything to happen. You just
my queer friend. If there was no Christianity, you wouldn't even know what to complain about, because you wouldn't even know what the standard was. It would just be power. It would just be, I'm stronger than you, and I can do whatever the fuck I want to you, and that's all it would be about. And you would either be on one side of that or the other side, and there would be nothing else.
That was how it
we
was.
have Christianity that allows people to understand the fucking difference between.
That was how it was. That was how it was in Christendom. People got burnt at the stake for being the wrong kind of
people
Christian.
did get. Well, the thing is that Christians probably shouldn't have been imposing their laws on anyone, but when they did it brutally. But the thing is that, well, just. It sounds like you don't have principles, and that you don't. It sounds like you don't have principles.
You think the worst of me.
No, I think that you tolerate things that you think are heinously evil, I think
you assume too much about me.
Do you think homosexuality is heinously evil? Don't you believe that homosexuality is heinously evil? Don't you believe that?
I just told you that, if maybe.
Do you believe it's heinously evil or no?
I talk too much, and you guys weren't listening to me when I said that all sin comes from self-righteousness, and it doesn't matter where the arrow falls. The fact is that you missed the target. So, I guess you weren't listening then.
And there's no punishment for it, but you don't punish people for doing these things. So I don't know what to tell you.
All right, I'm getting annoyed now. Okay, so thanks for having me on. I'll see you guys some other time. Bye.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, bye.
Well,
He couldn't even.
So it's like no punishment. He just won't talk about punishment. It's like, yeah, it's bad. What's going to happen? Nothing. No punishment.
Yeah,
That's
no, I
basically all
mean,
this is.
he got caught because I told him, like, basically, he's trying to make it so that now that, okay, well, you have to go outside the New Testament in order to get things like punishing criminals and
he went from Jesus to Jefferson in one leap.
Yes, and to say
Jefferson
that
wasn't even Christian. Towards the, I mean, he was a Unitarian, wasn't he? Do we want to check that? I mean, he denied the Trinity.
Yeah, he did.
So if he was any kind of Christian, he would be a Unitarian Christian, and then he would have been in Europe declared a heretic. And I guess if it was a few centuries earlier, he would have been burnt at the stake. And I guess Arturo would have been okay about it. I don't know. I mean, it's all so yes and no. And that's the most annoying thing. I mean, at least a Jew would say, well, the Torah does say stone sodomites to death. And a Muslim would say, well, there is a verse about it in the Quran that says some kind of punishment. But for him, it's like yes and no. And that is fundamentally the problem with Christians. They want it to be yes and no because they want to have room for maneuver. So I guess when the Christian kingdoms were operating sensible laws, things worked reasonably well, and now that the ultra liberals have taken over, everything is falling apart. But anyway, I know he has a copy of the Quran, so maybe he'll read it.
Well, it's just, it's that, it's like, well, as a Christian, who are you to, like, well, it is like what you tolerate says a lot about you.
Well, the thing is, there are rules about what we are to tolerate. That is the whole purpose of having rules. So if the rules say stone sodomites to death, then it's like you know that you're not supposed to tolerate them. Whether you agree about being tolerant towards homosexuals, you would also know the rule is that it attracts a death penalty, so not to tolerate it. I mean, that is how these rules work. But I mean, obviously,
yeah, I mean, you have to know what to tolerate
and it says punish them, and if they say sorry,
what not to tolerate,
let them go, and that kind of thing. I mean, the stoning of sodomites comes from the Talmud anyway.
The point is I guess the point is that.
The point is that Christians are confused, and it's like, okay, he gets it about idolatry. He can say idolatry is a worship of anything that isn't God, and then he doesn't get. He does this incarnation, like Jesus is an incarnation of God, and then you tell him that the book of Deuteronomy says if anybody calls themselves God, kill him. Right? That's Deuteronomy chapter 13. Wasn't that the one you told me about?
Well, I don't know, but, and yeah, he's like, why are you so obsessed with idolatry? He didn't like the question because, it's just, why would God, who believes idolatry is so heinous, come and even break its forbiddance for Jews? Not just for non-Jews, for Jews too. Like, now everyone can practice idolatry? You know what I mean? Like, why would God do that?
Yes, exactly. So that at least Scripture is clear, or the Torah is clear. It does say, idolatry attracts a death penalty, and also blasphemy, and also breaking the Sabbath, and 36 of them. But, the New Testament doesn't say anything, and the Quran is a bit vague. I mean, it does say punish people, but it doesn't specify the punishment for idolatry. In fact, it says, well, you know, there will be idolaters, but there's no punishment for them. There is no punishment for blasphemy. And I would argue that chapter 2, verse 256 protects or supports the First Amendment. And there is nothing in the Bible, nothing in the Old or New Testament that supports the First Amendment. So I think Arturo does support the First Amendment. Next time I speak to him, I'll ask him. So I mean, you can't use any other scripture to support the First Amendment other than the Quran. And that's why it's so important. Because, I mean, it's so obvious that Congress is trying to abolish it. And in the UK, every day there are more proposals of, trying to label people extremists if they don't subscribe to British values and all that crap. And what are British values? Only they can say what British values are. So British values for the British is this new British religion. But, we all know that it just came out of the blue. It's not like it's from the Bible or anything like that. It's just something cooked up by the government. I mean, maybe you guys are going to have it soon. American values.
Well, we do supposedly have American values of like whatever individualism and whatever. I don't even know. Yeah, it's like, these things are hard to determine, and unless you
particularly
have
if they're not codified. I mean, you see the difference between Hinduism, which is completely uncodified, so people just make up the rules as they go along, and you get to Buddhism, which is codified Hinduism. I don't know if you studied it, but at least, the Buddha got round to saying, well, there's the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths. And, stuff like that. So people go, oh, the Four Noble Truths, and they can cite them, and the Eightfold Path, and they can cite them. But if you don't have a system like, the 13 Principles of Judaism, the 10 Commandments, and, the No-Hide Laws, or, something easy to remember like that, then what will happen is that your political leaders will just say, Christianity is what I say they are. Or, Islam, or, liberalism, or whatever. And I will keep changing the rules as I go along. And that is why I keep going on about why it is necessary for Americans for their own protection, Vincent. That's why you need a list of rules. So when Congress exceeds its powers, you can say, oh, hey, you're not supposed to be saying this because our moral system says that. Do I make myself clear? Do you understand the point I'm making? I don't even know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you want something where it's like, we have this, you want yes and no, black and white, and these other kinds of things.
So I use my Nazi example again. So if if the official moral system of America was Nazism, then when Congress said, we have to be nice to Jews now and let them go first and never hurt their feelings, you will know that something has gone wrong. That Congress is going back, is cancelling its own religion. Or political orthodoxy. And that is the practical reason why Americans, for their own protection, need a moral system. And Christianity is not going to do the job. Because just listen to how Arturo was arguing. He was basically, well, I mean, he was waffling. I mean,
Well,
no Christian can ever say, which one, Jesus came to fulfill the law. And it's like, oh, yes, which ones did he fulfill? And where are they now? Because if he's talking about a Torah theocracy, actually, he couldn't have fulfilled it then, because at the time he was executed, Judea was under Roman control. Because, all the story of Jesus being taken to Pontius Pilate because the Jews wanted him executed for blasphemy, and Pontius Pilate said, no, this is not a Roman thing. He's just a madman. I'm not going to execute him for your, whatever reason you want him to execute him for. So he didn't do that. So Judea, the kingdom of Judea had no control over its own laws. It was no longer an independent Jewish state practicing its own laws. It was taken over by the Romans. So when Jesus said, I have come to fulfill the law, it was nonsensical. Nobody can make any sense out of it. Am I making sense?
No, it doesn't make sense. And, what do you mean you didn't come to I came to fulfill it? What the fuck does that mean?
Exactly.
What does that mean, you came to fulfill it? I don't get it. I certainly don't get it. And, I don't see how what was the fucking point of killing all those idol worshippers if he was just going to come and allow it anyway? What was the point of that? What you needed to murder all these people in order to make a point about idolatry just so that you would lift the ban globally? What kind of fucking God is that?
Well, okay, I have an explanation. So basically, the idea was that he was going to allow Christians who broke all the rules of warfare to acquire 3 global empires, and then when they see the error of their ways, when they no longer believe in their own religion and can't follow its rules, Islam will just take over. And that was the purpose of Christianity, to kind of go supernova and then red dwarf. I hope that's the correct analogy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, kind of. I mean...
So I'm saying that doesn't mean that God, is sort of wrong, but and Jews and Muslims are going to complain like, oh, the horrible Christians, the bullied and abused and exploited us. It's like, well, obviously Jews are not capable of following the Torah because it's too hard, and so what sensible Jews?
Besides the temple duties, what are Orthodox Jews breaking in the Torah? What are they breaking?
No, the point. Oh, we're talking about
it's
Roman
not
times.
Too hard.
Yes?
It's not too hard. It's not too hard for Jews to follow. I mean, and then Jews who don't follow it just don't count. They don't count.
Yes, but they should be made to. They should be struck off the register, because really it's actually a problem for them, because if they go around saying I'm a Jew, and I don't practice, then if God exists, then he's going to be punishing them for all the stuff that they didn't do, i.e., it's death for breaking the Sabbath, which is fine for a Gentile, because Gentiles don't need to keep the Sabbath, and it's not death for them if they don't keep it. So a lot of these secular Jews who think, I'm getting away with claiming the privileges without the responsibilities of being a Jew. So yes, they might appear to get away with it in this life, but they could, if there is an afterlife, find a whole stack of death penalties, of missed Sabbaths, and God knows what else waiting for them when they get to the other side, and they'll just have to be, burned or beheaded or stoned or strangled for, whatever, any of the 36 capital offences that they committed. So that is their hell. So we don't even need to imagine, what hell could be like for all these Jews, right? That, and this isn't something that I made up, because apparently rabbis would tell Jews about to be executed by stoning and say, oh, don't worry about it, old chap. It just means you won't find this waiting for you when you get to the other side. So that was how Jews would comfort people about to be executed. But this can be used against them. And so maybe if you're a Jew, you do want to be struck off the register, because otherwise all the punishments for Jews would apply to you. And if you haven't been an observant Jew, then you'll have a lot of death penalties waiting for you on the other side. And there's no need to imagine how hot hell is going to be or anything. It's like, well, so when Jews get to the other side, that they'll just have to submit to all these punishments that they have clocked up in one Jewish lifetime, and that's that's their fate. And I think Gentiles can make a good point about it. They can talk about it. They can keep making this point until they get it, until they understand what the deal is, and the responsibilities of being a Jew, and also offer the option of the Judaism light of Islam, and also Muslims also have their responsibilities, which they haven't been exactly fulfilling. And one of the things I keep telling the Muslims is that they are the eternal victims of Western imperialism, because they never admonished those who claim that God has begotten a son. So, this is chapter 18, verse 4 of the Quran. So because they didn't care about these Europeans who had this horrible religion, and they never bothered converting them and reaching out to them, a few centuries later they came over as crusaders and murdered those Jews and Muslims in the Levant. And then afterwards the Europeans were guilty of further acts of imperial exploitation, and it still continues. And it was all because they couldn't be bothered to do their dawah to these Christians who had their horrible religion all those centuries ago, when they took it seriously. The horrible religion that burned heretics at the stake, and heretics were defined as people who denied the divinity of Jesus. So I don't think Arturo understands how it was, or maybe he half understands it, because when I was talking to him, he was saying, "Oh, do you mean Christianity on European style, or Christianity American style?" And I thought that there shouldn't be different kinds of Christianity, because if you look at Christianity, it was always meant to support the divine right of kings. So the moment, so really Americans had no need for it, and at least Jefferson understood it, because of the First Amendment. He couldn't have the first. He couldn't allow Christianity to be the official religion, because he feared, well, founding fathers collectively feared, that if this were allowed, then monarchy would be restored. Because Christianity was the religion that supported monarchy. Does this make sense?
Well, I don't get the divine right of kings things. I don't see how Jesus gives divine right of kings. If anything, I see the opposite.
Okay, it's not really so much about Jesus, but the Catholic Church So we know from the story of Constantine, who changed the religion of Rome because he knew that nobody believed in the Roman imperial cult, because there was all these civil wars and all these warlords who wanted to be emperor, and they were always fighting. So he thought having a new religion might stabilize his empire. But actually, it didn't even help. So we know from the Council of Nicaea, which was called by Constantine, that they couldn't even agree. I mean, he called the Christian bishops to Nicaea because he knew that as a non-Christian emperor, he couldn't dictate Christian doctrine. But he said, Christian bishops come to Nicaea, agree a doctrine, and then I will roll it out through my empire. But instead of just agreeing a doctrine, they had schism between the Arians and the Athanasians, right?
Yeah.
So they never could agree, and Constantine didn't really get it, and he was an Arian. And I had this conversation with E. Michael Jones, and E. Michael Jones, who's a Catholic, actually said that Arianism was easier to believe than Trinitarianism. And it was only on the 31st of December, or actually New Year's Day, this year, when I was talking to Judas, that I realized what it was really all about, because Judas started telling me that Jews are forbidden to celebrate the 31st of December because it was a birthday of Pope Sylvester I, who was horrible to Jews. And then I looked up Sylvester, and he was known for kicking out the Jews from Jerusalem. He got Constantine the Great to expel Jews from Jerusalem. The reason was not explicitly explained, but I think it's pretty clear. I can imagine, being a Jew in that time and thinking, oh, so you've got this new religion now, have you? And who is this God of yours who got accused and convicted and crucified and died, and and it's like, oh well, and you say he is the son of our God? Well, our God is more powerful than your pathetic Jesus. That, I think, was what the Jews couldn't stop themselves from saying until Sylvester thought, well, we just have to kick them out now, because we can't have them mocking the faith of our empire. But this has not been properly explained. They're saying, oh, they were exiled because of Bar Kokhba and all that sort of thing, and there were basically Jews in Jerusalem then, because they had to be there in order to be expelled, right? So let's look up Bar Kokhba, which I'm sure was a bit earlier. Yeah, it was 132 CE. So that was a long time ago. So there must have been Jews in Jerusalem for them to be expelled by Sylvester I. Shall we? I'll give you the link to Pope Sylvester. It's like there are all these. Okay, maybe I should write a book about it. But I'm not a trained historian. But you can kind of work things out, can't you? So Sylvester the first was like, he's just so wonderful, and he got Constantine to do all kinds of stuff and blah
and blah.
Yes. So there's legacy, and then there's a legend called the donation of Constantine, which is a fabricated document. Which is a document fabricated in the second half of the 8th century, purporting to be a record by the emperor himself of his conversion, the profession of his new faith, and the privileges he conferred on Pope Sylvester I, his clergy, and their successors. According to it, Pope Sylvester was offered the imperial crown, which, however, he refused. And actually, the Catholic Church is infamous for forging documents. So here's a story. The story which recounts okay, so the story is Constantine the king wanted to take a second wife and asked Sylvester. Sylvester denies him permission, calling on heavens as witness. Constantine threatens him, and Sylvester, rather than give in, escapes into the woods. Not long after, Constantine falls ill. When he is desperate of ever regaining his health, he has a dream which commands him to send for Sylvester. He obeys, and Sylvester receives Constantine's messengers in his cave and swiftly baptizes them. Whereafter, having shown them several miracles, he is led back to Constantine, whom he baptizes also and cures. In this story, Constantine and his entourage are not pagans, but Jews. And then there's a story of him slaying the dragon and all kinds of things. But anyway, the donation of Constantine is, he cured leprosy and all kinds of amazing things. But the most important thing he did was that he kicked out the Jews. And I'm trying to find that out. Have I posted the link? No, I haven't. I meant to post a link in the private chat so you can look at it if you're interested.
Actually, I'm going to get going. I've been on here for 2 hours and 41 minutes.
Yes. All right, then. Well, it was fun anyway. I'm glad you met Arturo.
Yes.
All right. Thank you
for
asking me.
Yep.
Thank you. Bye.